8:30, so we are about to begin. DCA moderator, how are we doing up there? Do you hear us? Is everything okay for you?
Everything looks like it's working perfectly.
Okay, then we're going to begin the meeting. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this dental board meeting. I am Alan Felsenfeld, and I serve as the president of the board. Today is Friday, November 8th, 2024. This board meeting is being held via teleconference with the disclosed in-person location available for the board and public member participation. For all those who wish to participate online, please log on to the WebEx website provided on the posted agenda for this meeting. Instructions to connect to the meeting are provided on the agenda. The preferred audio connection is via telephone conference and not the microphone and speakers on your computer. The phone number and access code will be provided as part of your connection to the meeting. During each call for comments from board members and speakers, we will ensure that all comments that can be accommodated are heard before proceeding with the agenda. This is an official business meeting of the Dental Board of California. The board welcomes public comments on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to wait for public comments. We're having some background noise. Sorry. Anyway, it's the board's intent to ask for public comments prior to the board taking action on any agenda item. The DCA moderator will explain the process for providing public comments shortly. For individuals participating via WebEx, when called upon, the moderator will give the individual permission to unmute themselves, and they will have 2 minutes to make public comment, as will the in-room people. After the 2 minutes have elapsed, the individual will be placed back on mute. Only one public comment per agenda item is allowed per attendee. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic. All right. I'm sorry, we are getting some background noise here. We ask all speakers to please stay on topic.
So they do.
Not repeat.
No, it's just
Pause for 1 second.
Just a general warning.
Yes, correct. We do seem to be getting someone unmuted. If anyone is not currently speaking, which is everyone other than the board chair, please mute your microphone. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's pick that up again. We ask all speakers to stay on topic and not repeat testimony already provided. If you agree with the testimony provided, please just state your name and that you're in support of any comments previously made. I would now like to ask the DCA moderator to please explain how public comments will be taken during the meeting.
This is the DCA moderator. It seems like perhaps there's an echo. If anyone is in the room who has their microphone on and is not speaking, please mute. If anyone's using their speakers out of their laptop, you may wish to mute that as well. When we do open for public comment, we will be displaying instructions on the screen. We are using the hand raise feature. You can click on the hand icon in the bottom row of your WebEx screen, or you may raise your hand if you are a calling user by pressing *3. The other option is to click on the question mark icon, and then when that opens, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each person will have a stated 2 minutes, and we ask people to speak only once per agenda item. You will get a 30-second warning when your time is approaching being up. If we could take a moment to clarify the audio issue. Is there any staff in the room who may be able to troubleshoot?
And this is Tracy, the executive officer. We are not having any echo on site here. Are you having an echo?
I am, but if it's not affecting the room, I'm comfortable continuing as it is.
Those who are logged in, we will get started here shortly. Thank you for your patience.
It sounds like we're getting somebody else's meeting.
Correct. And I have heard that there are in the live stream and in the WebEx, there is the echo. if you would be so generous as to allow us a moment to troubleshoot.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, let's take a moment, everybody, while we troubleshoot.
This is the moderator. I believe, hopefully, we are ready to begin again.
Okay, it sounds like we're under control right now. So DCA moderator, you were not complete on your portion. Would you like to pick it up from where you were?
I believe I was that each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning.
That's correct.
And we ask each speaker to speak only once on any agenda topic. And that is all.
Okay, I'll pick up. I have some additional announcements I'd like to make. Please note that the question and answer feature, even through the moderator, is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make verbal comments. This is not a means to ask questions of the moderator or board members. Questions submitted using this feature will not be answered. We do not engage in back and forth discussion for public comment. While you are free to express criticism or negative views for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. I'll perhaps make a brief reminder about public comment as we get to it. Before we call the meeting to order, I think Ms. Welsh has something she'd like to do. Got to call it to order before we take attendance. All right, thank you very much. Then I would like then to call the meeting to order and ask the board secretary to call the roll after Ms. Welsh makes her comments.
This is Tara Welch, Board Counsel. We need to check in with our remote board members. Dr. Forge, are there any individuals 18 years of age or older who are present in the room with you?
No, they're not.
Dr. Thakur, are there any individuals 18 years of age or older who are present in the room with you?
No.
Okay, so this is a reminder that if you must visibly appear on your cameras, if you experience a technical issue with your camera, you will need to let us know. Perhaps it may be an internet connectivity issue, whatever it is, but you'll just need to let us know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Welch. And Dr. Loren, would you be kind enough to call the roll?
Good morning, it's Dr. Larin. I will call the roll. Chan?
Chan present.
Chan present. Cheng?
Chang present.
Cheng present. David?
David present.
David present. Felsenfeld?
Felsenfeld present.
Felsenfeld present. Forge?
Forge present.
Forge present. Larin present. McKenzie?
Mackenzie here.
McKenzie present. Medina? Medina absent, right? Molina?
Molina here.
Molina present. Olage?
Present.
Olage present. Pacheco? Pacheco absent. Thakur?
Thakur present.
Thakur present. You?
You present.
You present. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll pick up the agenda with item number 24, the board president's report on closed session items. The board in closed session last night discussed and approved a proposed decision. Are there any in-person public comments? Seeing none, are there any public comments from individuals participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
This is the DCA moderator. We've opened up the WebEx public comment features. If you'd like to make a comment, you may click on the hand icon to raise your hand. Or the other option is you may look for the question mark icon, click that. Type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. And please speak only once per agenda item. Are there any public comments on this item? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll move on to agenda item number 25. This will be a presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding Business and Professions Code Section 853 regarding licensed physicians and dentists from the Mexico pilot program. Going to ask Dr. Montez, our executive officer, to introduce this agenda item.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld, and good morning. Tracy Montez, Executive Officer of the Dental Board of California. Agenda item 25 begins on page 282 of the board meeting materials. Some very brief background. Business and Professions Code Section 853 outlines the licensed physicians and dentists from Mexico pilot program. Among other requirements, this program allows up to 30 licensed physicians specializing in family practice, internal medicine, pediatrics, and in gynecology, and up to 30 licensed dentists from Mexico to practice medicine or dentistry in California for a period not to exceed 3 years. However, recent legislation, Assembly Bill 2860, repeals BP Section 853. Specifically, it creates two separate programs, one for physicians and surgeons and one for dentists. The program for physicians and surgeons pilot designation was removed. Congratulations, Mr. Torres. So as part of the board's efforts to address access to care issues, again, within the mission of the dental board to protect patients and consumers of dental services, board staff discussed the licensed physicians from Mexico pilot program with the Department of Consumer Affairs executives and Mr. Torres, policy consultant. Mr. Torres has worked extensively with the Medical Board of California to facilitate a collaborative and constructive relationship moving this program forward. He will be making a presentation to the board illustrating the success of the program and how our board could learn from implementation of the medical board's pilot program. And so he's going to make a presentation about 15 to 20 minutes. We have materials that have been provided to you. We also are in the process of posting them if they haven't been posted yet. But really the action here that the board may choose to take is to continue these discussions about legislation that Mr. Torres may bring forward and perhaps how the board could work with this legislation and again work towards the positive aspects of the Mexico pilot program. And so I will now turn it over to Mr. Torres for his presentation. And after he makes his, after he makes his 15 to 20 minute presentation, we'll open it up to the board for questions that you may have. We also will have public comment, but I want to remind our audience here that this is not a time for questions of Mr. Torres. It is a time for the board to ask questions. The public may make statements or comments that we can follow up on, but we want to be careful how we engage and make sure that we follow the appropriate protocols. And again, I'd like to state that I anticipate that this will be the first of many presentations to continue. So this is our introductory presentation. And with that, thank you very much, Mr. Torres. The floor is yours.
I can't thank you enough for taking the initiative to invite us to make a presentation on our program and to provide you with perspective, an understanding of how we did what we've done and how we'd like to proceed with the dental board. We
Mr.
provided
Torres, is
you.
your microphone on? Is your microphone on? Do you see a green light at the
Yes,
bottom of that?
it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The legislation that we provided you was the initial legislation, AB 1045. The introductory paragraphs underscore just how bad the problem was at the time that we did the bill in the year 2000. The shortages that existed in the medical arena as well as in the dental area. The introductory paragraphs that we have in AB 2860, which was referenced by Ms. Montez, we kept the same language in the introductory paragraphs of 1045 and then added to how much the situation had changed. What has changed is that it's simply gotten worse. So what we wanted to make sure is that when people read the statute, they don't have to read anything outside material. It's all very well laid out as to how bad the problems are. But even the data that we cite and the different sources really cannot effectively portray the seriousness of access problems when it comes to healthcare. The health of our population in this state is key to the economic strength and profile of this state. And we're not a very healthy state. We don't have a great Medi-Cal program working. That's not blaming the dentist or the doctors. It just doesn't rank well with all of the other states when it comes to measurement outcomes. I've spent better than 30 years studying this stuff. I feel very confident that what I share with you today is quite factual and have a great deal of supporting documentation to underscore that. It was a very difficult program when we first started it, AB 1045. Opposition was extensive from the medical arena. But despite that, we were able to get the signature of Governor Davis and the support of the director of the Department of Healthcare Services at the time, Diana Bonta. Clearly, everyone recognized how bad the data was. Even the CMA recognized it. But it was a turf issue. And we were always at a loss to understand why was it a turf issue. Nobody was seeing the population that we were most concerned with, which were people who don't speak English, people who don't have culture that has to be factored into when you're doing a diagnosis of any kind of condition. It's somewhat less when it comes to dental, but it nonetheless is still very much a barrier and a factor. And it isn't only Hispanics, but because Hispanics are the largest population that we're dealing with and will always be the largest population, contrary to what the Filipino community would like to say, even though they're the fastest growing population in the state. The reality is that the problems are quite extensive, persistent. They get into very serious dimensions when it comes to specialties outside of the four that we operate with and the ones that we focus on. These four are preventive medicine. They are the backbone of a preventive model, and that is why we focused on those four. Nothing has changed. There's still shortages in every one of those areas. The March of Dimes just came out with a report that there are birthing deserts throughout California and throughout the nation. It's an amazing number when you look at their report. That means we don't have enough OBs that speak the language and are in fact located in rural areas. If you look at the Central Valley, there are two major hospitals that do deliveries now, one in Fresno and one in Bakersfield, Kern General. So what happens to all those people in between that are supposed to have at least 10 to 15 minutes to be able to get to an OB ward? When you got a lot of midwives and you've got a lot of other problems. That hasn't changed much. We have a dimension of a problem with the hospital. But anyway, once we took all of those factors into consideration, we came up with a pilot. We knew that we always had to demonstrate that the doctors from Mexico were always going to be regarded as less than American trained doctors. That will never escape the doctors from Mexico. It makes no difference how many evaluations that UC or UCSF or any university will do. There will always be a question mark. That's just nature, and that's the sad thing about it. So what we do with the Doctors from Mexico program is we required a 3-year evaluation. I've given you the 3 years of the summary of those evaluations. They all are exactly what we believed they would be. The doctors in Mexico perform just as well as any doctor trained in the United States of America, anywhere in Europe that come here and get a foreign medical graduate standing and pass the USMLEs. We were not surprised by any of that. But we have different criteria, and this is where I think it's very important for the board to understand. The problem of access is so severe in California. California has 690-something health professional shortage areas. You would think that California would be a little bit better off than that. No, we're number one in the country. Texas has the second most, 483, 463. How is it possible that California would have so many health professional shortage areas? You're a dentist. You have your own opinions, but we have ours in the medical arena, and they're very much tied to the institutions. The medical schools do not focus on the population that California has and never have. They do not prepare the students and the future doctors of California to deal with the reality of the patient base that you have. So what did we do? We turned around and we looked at what we thought were very reasonable standards that doctors from Mexico should have to meet. We required board certification. We had to make a presentation to the medical board to confirm that board certification in Mexico was equivalent, not only in the development of the exam for board certification in Mexico, but the process, the areas that were covered, and then the scoring of the board certification exam. And so we had a presentation made across the hall by representatives of UNAM, the National Autonomous University of Mexico School of Medicine, which is considered the best in Latin America. It's the oldest in the Western Hemisphere. They and representatives from the councils of pediatrics, OBs, it's just easier to say OBs, internal medicine and family medicine. They all came. These are the boards that actually certify the doctors. They develop the exam along with the national entity in Mexico that develops the exam. And we made the argument, they made the argument to the medical board to the point where the medical board accepted that board certification in Mexico was going to be recognized in the state of California. So we no longer are dealing now with USMLE standards. We have a separate program in California. Now, granted, it is under the constraints or structure of the program of the pilot, which continues now with AB 2860, but it also required that they have to take an orientation program of all of this key elements that differ California's situation when it comes to primary care and access issues, the demographics of the populations that are most impacted. This year in 2860, we added 2 elements. One, we want them to have a better orientation to the electronic medical record systems that community health centers operate. And we want to shore up the issue of the charts, medical charts. What we find is that when you have electronic medical records, you pretty much follow what they tell you. But in the charts, you have to do a better job of providing more details as to how you got to that diagnosis. What were the indicators that you saw outside of what you put down in an electronic medical records? So we've added those 2 new components to the orientation program. They have to, in the pilot, they had to be enrolled in an English language course. We did not put a TOEFL standard, an exam standard there, but we have now in 2860. For 2860, we require them to score 85 on the TOEFL exam, and we require them to achieve a score of 350 on the English Occupational Index exam. Either one of those exams will be fine. They will have to confirm that through primary source to the medical board. All of that material has to be sent to the medical board by primary source. Board certification has to be sent to the medical board by primary source. Their medical license has to be sent by the Secretaría de Educación, the component that deals with the medical professions. The English score will now have to be sent by TOEFL, primary source. Before, we had to have them send by primary source that they were enrolled in classes for English on comprehension, writing, and verbal skills. The 85 score, in our opinion, is a good enough score that we feel very comfortable with. What we recognized was that English was much more important and was a bigger player in what they were doing in the health centers because of their interaction with pharmacies, their interaction with hospitals, their interaction with other doctors. The English had to simply be better. We were very pleased with the English level. I think there was only 1 or 2 of the 30 doctors that had some difficulty, but the more they stayed and they continued to take English classes while they were here, it was required by our law. They simply got better. We did not provide for more than 3 years, except we made an exception with these 27 doctors now. We allowed them to remain another 3 years, through legislation that we did 2 years ago. Why? Because they came during the pandemic and they were never able to function as well as we would have wanted them to function during the pandemic. So we gave all the doctors a 3-year extension. The medical board was in complete agreement with us on that rationale. We will not do that again with any of the new classes. This program, the 2860 program, will go on for 15 years. Every 3 years, we will bring in new doctors. Every 3 years, in the 4 medical specialties, there will be an increase of 30, depending on what the demand is amongst the health centers where these doctors will be practicing. You could have more OBs. Right now, out of the 95 doctors that we have in the 2860 program, 65 are family medicine. So family medicine is the backbone. Everybody wants family medicine, but we're concerned about OBs. We think that we should be encouraging the health centers to bring in more OBs because of the birthing deserts. We don't have a say in that with what the health centers request, but we certainly have the ability to write it in and have them focus and revolve around the concerns that we see on a bigger picture level. Our relationship with the medical board was difficult. We wrote the bill in 2000, in 1998 to 2000, it passed, but we didn't implement it until the first doctors came in 2021. And the reason for that was because every UC medical school, including Loma Linda and USC, did not want to sponsor the orientation program. They had 2 bites of the apple. They opposed the bill vehemently, and they were very successful in hurting the implementation of this program. But come 2016, Dr. Cuevas, who is not with me here, but was the leading clinic advocate and supporter of this program. Without him, I don't think we would have this meeting today. He was persistent, asked me to get back involved, and we were able to finally, after 3-4 years of working this out with the medical board, what we learned, and Tara will really appreciate this, I was just discussing this with your legislative director, our biggest challenge and what we learned from the legal counsel at medical board was, Arnold, I'm not interested and I can't interpret what you wrote, and I'm not going to interpret what you wrote despite your legislative history and intent, knowledge of it. I'm not going to pay attention to it. If it's not in black and white, I'm not going to deviate from the black and white, what's in the law. So that's a lesson that we've learned. We'll be very specific when we develop the new provisions for the dental program. They will not exist the way we wrote them in the bill 2860. It's much too cumbersome. We don't think it, we don't want to work with just UNAM. When we wrote the bill, it was only working with UNAM. We don't intend to work only with UNAM. I'll go into the details a little bit more of how we're going to do it. And I look forward to working with your staff immediately. We should have a draft of the bill in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we will be working very closely with you to make sure that you are satisfied. But I do want to caution you about one thing. I was coming here and driving and listening to CNN, and some people may say, do we really need a program like this going forward? Because there's going to be deportations. And they had a representative of the transition team from Mr. Trump. And this is the infamous Ken Cuccinelli. I say he's infamous because I can't stand the guy. But this guy was talking about what I predict and what I do, because I do a lot of political analysis for Univision. So I do a lot of commentary. And he said exactly what I believe they were going to do. They don't really care about separating families. If they find an undocumented person, he said today that the families will have to decide. If the parent is one of the parents is going to be deported and the other parent stays with their children, or if both parents are going to be deported, and the children will have to decide if they're old enough or they stay with other family member that's legally in the United States, they'll stay here. So there will be deportations. And I would suspect that California will be targeted because the incoming president does not like California. So the question may be, do we need a program like this? And we believe that you definitely still need a program like this. Because you have kind of an unstated agreement between the grower community of the Central Valley that voted overwhelmingly for Mr. Trump and Mr. Trump. And that is, we'll vote for you, but give us all the water that we want and make sure that we have all the cheap labor that we can get. So as long as you have that cheap labor in this state, which you have had for decades, that's what we're dealing with now. here are the consequences of not developing a commonsensical approach of training American students, American-born individuals, to learn enough culture and language of the patient population, not just Spanish, but different Asian dialects, different European dialects now and cultures, to train them to see the population that we have in the state. We will never in a million years get to the point where we have to without Mexico's participation. That is a reality. National politics will have a very big impact. But as we have demonstrated with this program with the doctors and what we believe will simply follow suit with the dentists, California has always functioned differently. Oftentimes we're a little bit ahead of the curve. This bill, we're definitely ahead of the curve. There is nothing like it in the United States. We feel very comfortable that it's a temporary program, that the doctors and the dentists will come temporarily. We do not want to take doctors, dentists not as much, because there's an oversupply of dentists. So now let me tell you now very quickly before the chairman tells me you're at 15 minutes, Mr. Torres. Here is what we intend to do with the new bill. We will work with only the schools that are certified by CONAIDO. CONAIDO is the entity that is CODA in Mexico. So that is 34 universities. We will only work with those certified by CONAIDO. We will use the same, you guys were using the WERB. You now have an all-encompassing exam. Mexico now has the EGEL plus ODON exam. We've looked at both of those exams and detailed in Mexico the last 2 months. We met with the Mexican Dental Association, and we find them to be identical to the actual measurements of what they have to do in those 5 competencies that have to be shown. We will have an evaluation. The evaluation will be only 1 year. We don't want to go into a 3-year. We have to pay for it. There'll be no cost to the general fund, as we did with the doctor's program. We will find dollars from the foundation world for the evaluation. They will only be here for 3 years. We will have a component that allows for special board certification in pediatric dentistry. We may allow for other specialties that have to be certified, board certified in Mexico, as they have to be here, because we see that the population that we want to treat, the elderly have certain types of dental conditions that we need a specialty for that, as well as pediatrics. So they'll come in on the general dentistry criteria of the competencies, and we will allow for so many on the at least 2 specialties, but they have to be board certified. We will look at the board certification exams in between the United States and Mexico to make sure that they're in line with one another, and those will be reflected in the legislation that we prepare. We will also require, as our health centers have to do, they have to do peer reviews every month. They will continue to do those peer reviews of the doctors from Mexico. We may do what we have with UCSF. UCSF does a secondary, is it 20 minutes?
It is, sir. If you can wrap up your comments.
Yeah, I
on
would
this
just say,
part, and then we're going to give some time for questions
Yes.
from the board members.
I would say that we will, we may work out something with one of the dental schools as we did with UCSF. UCSF is in this program now, and they do a secondary peer review of the peer reviews that our clinics do. We think that's very important. That type of monitoring is very key. It goes to the issue of people always being concerned about the competency of the dentist from Mexico. And we'll either do it with UCSF if they want to, but I prefer UOP. I'm a graduate of UOP. UOP speaks for itself. The dean, everybody knows who he is. So we will do that, but it'll be a 1 year. We don't see that there's any very much differences in the capacity and the capability and the efficiency and the effectiveness and the professionalism of doctors. We don't see that any different with dentists when it comes to comparing them with their counterparts in the state. So we feel very confident. Some would say arrogant. I'll take that if nobody else wants to give me. I'll take the arrogance. We feel very, very comfortable that the dentists from Mexico will be just as good as the doctors from Mexico have been. In fact, they're better. Why? Because they speak the language and they know the culture of the patient. And that's no offense to the doctors in the United States that don't speak the language or don't speak the culture. The medical school should have looked into that and done it. I thank you again for your time. Look forward to any questions, and we'll be working with your staff as soon as we get the first draft.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. We'll entertain about 5 or 6 minutes. If the board has any questions, do you want Mr. David go first, and then Dr. Molina right behind him, and Dr. Yu.
Sure. You mentioned that back in the early 2000s, the medical schools weren't very supportive of your concept. Have dental schools been more cooperative, or where are you in that process?
I would tell you, and I appreciate the question, Mr. David, since you have good perspective. I would say that the dental schools are more conservative. The dentist world is more conservative than the medical world is. We had no opposition to our bill this year, expanding the program significantly. So that's the way I see it. I think a lot of things have changed since 2000, a lot. And I think maybe the recognition that there are these phenomenally huge gaps. But again, I would make sure that you all understand that our program is temporary. Our program is a Band-Aid. It's an effective Band-Aid on the medical side as much as on the dental side. The board must look at a long-term fifth pathway approach, as we once had in the medical arena. We will be introducing legislation on the medical side for a fifth pathway with 1 or 2 or 3 universities in Mexico. You have that in front of you with Moldova and with De La Salle. We think that the long-term strategy has to be there. You have to have a constant flow of American citizens being educated, students being able to do that. But here is the number one question, a number one issue you must be concerned about. We can tell those doctors from Mexico where to practice because they're not citizens of the state of California. We can tell them where they're going to practice. They're going to practice in community health centers. Now, they can select which health centers they're going to work at, depending on who wants to participate. But they're going to work at that health center for 3 years. They're not going to move to another area. You can't tell that to an American student, a student born in the United States, whether it's in California or any other place. They can go and practice anywhere. That's the problem. Nobody wants to go and practice in the areas that they need them the most. So I think that the dental community has been a little bit more tight in looking at things on a broader view. The medical board did not get there right away under any circumstances, but the medical board is phenomenal now as a board in them recognizing that there must be new paths to licensure to address this huge population of Californians that are not predominantly English speaking.
Thank you. Dr. Molina?
In terms of the 3 years that you're having the doctors rotate, what is the rationale? Because it seems to me that there's not going to provide continuity of care if it's only 3 years.
Continuity of care to us is the ability to know the language and the culture. You can't get that continuity of care anywhere else. That to us is the most important component. Taking care of a patient is key, but all of the information about that patient is there. As long as the patient can speak to a doctor that speaks the language and knows the culture, that to us is the most important continuity. That's one. 2, when we went to Mexico and had these discussions with the dean of the school at UNAM, it was so key that UNAM support this program. Why? Because the CMA, when we said that we were going to work with UNAM, CMA pulled back a lot of its intense opposition. And he said to us, Arnoldo, the dean, Alejandro Gravioto, says to me, Arnoldo, I will support this program, but I'm not going to give you doctors from Mexico. We paid for them to be educated here. I'm not going to have them go in the United States and practice, and you take them after we've prepared them. And he says, I'll lend them to you for 3 years. And we have honored that request on his part, and we will continue to honor that request on his part because we do not want to do brain drain with Mexico or any other country. This allows us to have a reasonable balance. and a very, very fair compromise because we desperately need their participation.
Thank you. Dr. Yu.
Yes, hi. Thank you for your presentation. I have been involved in overseas medical missionary work since 1998. Been to Golden Triangle and Indian area of China. We take a large group of medical doctors. So I understand the underserved area is very important. So in your presentation, you mentioned about the 690 underserved area in California. So how updated is this number?
That number is as of last year in the last publication by HRSA.
Okay, I see. And then you talk about the shortage of the doctor. We do understand there's a lot of dentists also oversupply. So is that possible? Just like when I refer my patient to see an endodontist who are Chinese speaking, they hire assistant that can translate for them. That can solve a lot of problem. And if we can arrange Spanish speaking assistant to help translation, then you may able to solve some problem, the shortage.
I think you could. I don't think it's a model that you completely rule out. But when you have 3 people, 4 people in an exam room or around a dental chair, is it better to have 2? The dentist, the patient, and the assistant. I think that we put a tremendous amount of emphasis on translators. The State Department of Healthcare Services does not monitor how well a job those interpreters do. They don't even monitor the bilingual services that healthcare providers do in their Medi-Cal program. And yet they're expanding their program to now do social services when they don't even monitor and measure the quality of medical translation. To us, that's taking a shot in the dark.
Yeah, okay. All the clinic that I refer to, they hire the dental assistant that can speak the language. So they have training, okay? The other suggestion is that how about to work with dental school, since all the students, they need to have experience in the clinic. So if they can serve in the community center and to fulfill their graduation requirement, that with the translator or assistant that can speak the language, that will help also.
There's no doubt having a dental assistant that speaks the language would be very, very helpful. But our experience, doctor, is that the most important component in the transaction of a medical encounter is that the lead person be able to speak the language. That is the ideal, and that's what we should be shooting for. This is the structure and the approach that we think gets us there in the best possible way without creating a program that we would feel uncomfortable creating, where you'd have to have mass numbers that I don't know if you could control the quality. We feel very comfortable that we control the quality here, but we think that the dental schools should require a course in language and culture. California is too diverse for you to not do that. We are no longer predominantly white. We are predominantly minority when you put all of the diversity together. So it doesn't make any sense to us anymore. This isn't about making sure that we take vengeance out on the system. This isn't about making sure that this is an issue of diversity and whatever the right side calls diversity, DEI, or whatever it is. It's just a practicality. Every goddamn medical journal, dental journal talks about the importance of cultural and linguistic competency. Not enough, because they keep thinking that translators are going to be the difference. How can you do a translator, let's say in the medical arena, for a psychiatrist, for a psychologist, for anything in mental health? And I think that when we began to try to cut corners, at the end of the day, what are we doing? At the end of the day, we're doing the worst thing we can do. I have a number of material that I just read last night that said dental hygienists can do the work that a dentist can do. Why are they going in that direction? I'll tell you why. Because there are not enough dentists. So everything that you see in California legislature, when you have these big fights between the different professions, it isn't about really the ability of one to do the work of the other. It's it is primarily because you don't have enough doctors. And now you have PAs who say, we're just as good as doctors. It's nurse practitioners that are just as good as doctors. Why? Because we don't have enough doctors. That's the fundamental problem. We're trying to address that problem through this type of temporary effort.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you for
Dr.
your
Yu,
explanation. Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Ford, you have.
Apologies, Dr. Ford.
Dr.
has her
Ford?
hand up.
Yes, good morning. I do have a couple of questions. One you answered for me, which was where the doctor is going to be located in practice. But I also want to know how many, are you still going to stick with the same model and have the 30 doctors come in the dental program as well?
We will have only 30 in the first 3 years. Yes, we will only have 30. We're not going to deviate from that. That's the way we started. That's the way we feel we should start this time. They should be evaluated, as we said, but we're not going to spend $1 million almost to evaluate the dentist as we did on the doctor side. So we will not have anything different. What will be different, simply as it was with the doctors, is depending on what the demand is. Whatever FQHCs are telling us, Arnold, we need pediatric dentists, we need help me with the word.
Endodontists.
There you go. I'll learn as
You're doing fine,
as
sir.
the OBs learn. So it'll be dependent on what they tell us that they need, which we will then go out and see if there's a reasonable and solid supply that meets the criteria that we want them to meet in order to participate in the program. The other thing that, as you may know, there is a special visa for dentists at the federal level because of the NAFTA agreement. For the doctors, we require that they meet 4 of the 8 criteria for an H-1B nationally renowned visa. So we're not just bringing in any doctor from Mexico. We're bringing in those that we know will meet the criteria of the visa, which again elevates the level and the capacity of the doctors. They're not just your run-of-the-mill doctors. We intend to do the same with
Thank you.
with
Dr.
them.
Ford, you had another question?
Yeah, I do. You're saying that they're going to be placed in centers where you control or know that the need is. But say that the need is elsewhere, will you move them as where the need is, or will they remain in the clinics that you designate for them?
They will remain in federally qualified health centers, wherever those health centers are. We started with 4 clinics. We now have 18. We identified areas along with the California Primary Care Association, who was a co-sponsor with us on the bill. We identified areas where the HPSAs were the most concentrated and presented the most challenges. And we tried to see if the health centers there were interested in participating. With no exception, that was the case. But we could have allocated everyone to Los Angeles County, and that's a mistake. We have needs throughout the rural area, and when you look at all the data, the rural areas are the most underserved. So we try to locate them there, but we recognize urban centers are in desperate need as well. So we work with all of the health centers who are interested because of our relationship with CPCA. And depending on the numbers that we have, the numbers that they request, we'll try and meet that demand and that need.
Thank you. Dr. Larin.
Good morning. I'm glad you're here today because you have thoroughly explained exactly what's happening in California as far as access to care. There are huge issues. Not only is it the translation issue, it's also not getting those dentists or physicians to those areas. They don't want to go work in these areas. They're just got out of school and they're paying a huge debt.
That's right.
And in Mexico, I studied in Mexico. We have no debt. So we go where we want to. I also wanted to mention, there's a program in Massachusetts for dentists. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
I just wondered how it compares, just briefly, how it compares to this program. I know it's been very effective and it's been around for over 20 years. Very successful. Just a brief explanation, please.
The difference for us is that it does not have the rural element as we do in California. It's largely in an urban area. Massachusetts is not very rural at all, except unless you're very wealthy, you have a nice house somewhere. But we think that the program has a lot of merit, but it's not as temporary. It doesn't have the same structure as ours does. And that to us is a very key element. It's one that we have to get adjusted to. I think Ms. Molina was concerned about the continuity of care. It has been a concern for us on that issue. We will find that out soon enough with what the concerns are on the continuity of care. It will be a challenge because we find that the patients have gotten so accustomed to the doctors that they've now had, because they've never had that kind of doctor. They've had a doctor they could speak to and really, everything that they would normally have in Mexico, they now have here, but just much greater resources, et cetera. So we'll find out after these next 3 years of the extension when the doctors go back. The other concern that we have to be focused on, and this is an issue that we have to deal with Mexico, and I just had a meeting with the new dean at the school at UNAM, is what do you do with those doctors when they go back? You see, a lot of them will not want to go back because, one, they don't like the political situation, and two, many of the doctors work for one of two major insurance programs in Mexico. The insurance program that covers all public employees and the insurance program that covers private sector who want insurance for their workers. You have to go back every year, at least for 2 weeks, to keep your plaza, right? Your position in that place where you're working. The union of those two, the unions that represent the doctors in those two programs, is not willing to give a waiver for more than a year. So what happens to those doctors who then lose that position when they go back? Our concern is that Mexico should be creating, and that's why we've had UNAM evaluate this program. We want them to determine, how do you deal with doctors that are now even better than they were before they came? That you can't just simply put them back in the position that they're in. They should be leading, they should be the vanguard for creating a whole new approach to how medicine is provided and access to care is provided in Mexico. Despite Mexico's constitutional right to access to care, it can't be provided. Do you know that Mexico is now bringing doctors in from Cuba because they say they don't have enough doctors in Mexico? It has nothing to do with the supply. You have more the doctors in Mexico than you can imagine. What you don't have is the money to pay them to see the patients that need the care.
All right, Dr. Loren, we good?
Dr.
All right, thank you.
Thacker.
Do we have
Dr. Thacker?
Dr. Thakur?
Yes, hi, thank you. You did allude to one of my questions about how does this impact Mexico and its population, because they produce the number of people that they think they need to serve their population. So perhaps going that route versus looking at how we could increase enrollment in dental schools here in the United States and making a requirement for them to serve in the areas might be a better route to explore first.
Dr. Thakur, you're coming through broken. Can you understand, Mr.
I'll do the best that I can with this, with what you heard.
Thank you.
We believe that the way we've structured the program and how we anticipate that it will grow on the dental side is probably the best approach to take. It is so important to have discipline in this program. It is very important to be able to know and to track, and that's been my responsibility significantly, is to track the performance of every doctor in every clinic. I've got to make sure that I protect the integrity of the program. I will have to do the same on the dental side. I cannot afford a dentist not doing the best imaginable job at a clinic, because the last thing I want to hear from the Dental Board of California is the concern about public safety. You do not know how offensive it is to hear someone telling us, a Mexican born in the United States of heritage of Mexico, that you're more concerned about the public safety of my population. No, that's unacceptable to us. So how do we protect that? We protect that by making sure that we allow enough doctors that we know we can track, that we know how well they're functioning. Same thing with dentists. We don't want a dentist to have one complaint ever issued under any circumstance to this board or even to the director of dentistry at their clinic. So we're very tight about that. If we blow this thing up too fast, then you don't have control anymore. And that control is not about ego or turf. It is about the idea and the reality that we will always have something to prove. We will always have to demonstrate the capability and the level of professionalism and effectiveness, outcomes that these dentists from Mexico will provide. So that's why we are trying to do the best to select those that are at the highest levels in Mexico, just like we're doing with the doctors. That's why we're only going to deal with certain universities. We may deal only with 25 of the 34, the ones that score the highest on the exams for certification, for licensure. So we still are going to make that decision. We're not going to make it any more than 34. We may make it just to 25 that scored 1, which means that's the highest score, 1+ for the exams that is given in Mexico. So we have made it very clear in Mexico, the standards that we're looking at, and we want the dental board to feel a degree of comfort of not feeling like, oh my God, what did we do? Did we open the door to substandard care? We are more concerned about substandard care than anybody could be. Our health centers have to be JCAHO accredited. They have to be NCQA, National Quality Health Assurance, accredited. And I forget the third, it's the AAA ambulatory accreditation. So those are very high accreditations. So the health centers that we allow in this program are already operating at a very, very high level of care.
Thank you. Dr. Thakor, you good with that? Did you get that? We can't hear you. Okay. We're going to move on. Any other board questions? And let's try to wrap it up, though. We have a lot more to do this morning. Go ahead, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. And thank you. There's a lot of moving parts in what you have to put before you. And
Dr. Chan, before you continue, I just want to thank you for recognizing that there are a crud load of moving parts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You should be commended for looking at all those different pieces. But let me start with life lesson number 1 for me. My grandmother came in 1924, likely on the last ship that allowed Chinese women to come into this country because of the Exclusion Acts. She didn't speak the language. She didn't understand what people were talking to her about. She only knew the 2 streets that were in LA Chinatown. That was her universe. She talked about the story where she had a baby and she was widowed really, really early in her journey here, where one of her babies was screaming in pain, was burning up with fever. She didn't know what to do. She had to find out what to do. She ended up trying to find a way through Charlie Car back then to get to what was called Big County, LA County General.
Yeah.
She found her way there. She couldn't explain. She couldn't tell them what to do. Life lesson number 1. Fast forward. Life lesson number 2. After I finished dental school, I did 3 years of postgraduate training in hospital dentistry. I was in a trauma center, LA County General, and then also Martin Luther King, South Central LA. In that population, you have someone coming to you. You had to learn how to speak Spanish. Someone's hurt. Someone's in dire pain. You had to learn to speak Spanish. Life lesson number 2. South Central LA has a sizable population of Spanish-speaking people. Guatemala is not the same as Venezuela, is not the same as Colombia, is not the same as El Salvador.
That's right.
Language is linguistics, is the entry level. culturally, it's different. Life lesson number 2. The next piece, and it's not so much a question, it's starting to see through the lens of what we do and what we're charged to do and trusted to do in protecting the public. So as we look through some of the early legislation on this, it talked about the orientation to some of the mechanics of how to integrate the dentist chair. That's a good thing. English competency. That's a good thing. Testing the knowledge base is very, very key. But I didn't see anywhere in the early legislation, of the 2 legislation. Here's where life lesson number 3 comes in, or 4. I was part of the volunteer group that was giving the vaccinations for COVID when it happened. In our community, there were hundreds per day coming through there. I've been on the medical staff. I'm the longest serving dentist on that medical staff. My colleagues of the same age, and there were 4 or 5 stations next to me, were physicians. Doc, you do more injections in one day than I've done in my career. Life lesson. Dentistry is different than medicine in that we perform, it's a performance. Daily, hourly, we do performance. Yes, the educational part is important, but how you perform is a key element in there. I did not see a firsthand calibration of the performance. Yes, I saw the other by testimonial from other agencies, but not a firsthand calibration. As I look further, some of the descriptions in the early legislation described medical license versus dental permits. I didn't know what that meant. In government, and you realize in government, definitions of words are very, very specific.
Right.
And they refer to another passage very specific. I looked through, I couldn't find what dental permits meant. I did find another passage that may be comparable into what we see. And again, realize our role is protecting the public. We don't care what you look like. We don't care where you came from. Human disease is human disease. Here's the element that I found in, let's see, it's Business and Professions Code 135.4, item B. And it refers to refugees, asylees, special immigrant visas holders, and professional licensing. Nothing in this section shall be construed as changing existing licensure requirements. A person applying for licensure under this provision shall meet all applicable statutory and regulatory licensure requirements. This is what guides us. Not any other agency within the borders of California. It's the public in California that we're entrusted with. Thank you.
Mr. Chen, I appreciate you and the roundabout. I appreciate that. And coming from you and the experience that you shared of your mother is a very, very important reality that we share. But now that you have become a professional and you live and die by the code of the book that you just held up, I want to make sure that we make a very clear point. Just because you're the dentist does not give you a monopoly on being more concerned about the public safety than we do. We have had to deal with the reality that the public safety has not been public safety. There has been nobody to take care of our population, regardless of what book anybody is pointing to. I hope I can make that clear to you. I hope I'm not trying to be a smart aleck or being aggressive in my response. But when we have had no one taking care of our population, where is the public safety concern? When has it ever been exhibited? When it has ever been translated into anything concrete where you can actually deal with a real problem of, you know what, we needed to create the access, we cut the corners here, but now we're concerned about public safety. We are as concerned and committed to the public safety standards that the California Board of Dentistry is responsible for. That is why the exam that you give for competencies, we believe is equivalent to what is done in Mexico. We will have to demonstrate that to you. We will have to make sure that we seek and we reach an agreement on what that is. But here is my very important point, and I know that Ms. Montez and your chair are really saying, God dang it, Mr. Torres, cut it. Here's the reality. The reality is that, and I'm working on with some of the national consejos in Mexico in those 4 specialties. There should be reciprocity agreements between the 2 countries. There has to be. That's the future, and it should have been the reality and the reality today, where we should have been seeking reciprocity. CONAIDO in Mexico is the equivalent of CODA in the United States. Why don't the two get together and reach an agreement as to what institutions that are doing dentistry have to meet? What are the competencies? And let's make sure that the exams are exactly the same. That isn't so that they can come in right away and immediately create a problem here. It's for the purposes of trying to address the concern that you've raised, which is that you've got a standard that you have to meet.
My last comment then is we deliver one smile at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. So yes, I do want to wrap things up because we have 2 more presentations and we still need to open this up for public comment. But again, I want to just remind everybody that this is the first step in a process, and baby steps are important. Research shows that if we take off and tackle small goals at a time, we can get to the eventual goal of providing more professionals, whether it's reciprocity or some other way. We have a first step here in addition to some other pathways that will get us there. So this has been very informative, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Felsenfeld for public comment.
And thank you for all your work. Don't leave.
No.
Don't leave. You're not going to be able to respond, but I'd like you to hear. We're going to ask, are there any comments from the public in-house who would like to make a comment at all to the board? You will have 2 minutes if you wish to do this. I see none. Okay. DCA moderator, would you please facilitate the WebEx to see if there are any public members who would like to make a comment at this point?
Will, and we have opened up the WebEx hand raise and Q&A features to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment, you can click once on the hand icon to raise your hand, or you may click on the question mark icon, type the word comment into the text box, and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the presentation? And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that public comment?
Yes, please. Ms. Torres, thank you very much again for your presentation. I'm going to direct staff to continue to work with representatives and stakeholders on any ideas or suggestions that are provided in the presentation, and continue to work through this.
I look forward to that.
It's formative right now.
Yes, and thank you very, very much. And I look forward to coming back and getting your 100% unanimous approval with you making the motion and Dr. Chan seconding it. Thank you very, very much.
You were here yesterday, huh? Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Torres. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Are we? All right, very good. We're all set for the next presentation, which is going to be done via WebEx. We now move on to item 26A, a presentation from the Commission on Dental Accreditation of the American Dental Association on the accreditation process for dental education programs. And we're going to ask Dr. Sharon Tooks to give us a talk and tell us a little about it, and welcome again. You've been here before, Dr. Tooks. And can we put her on the screen?
And certainly, Ms. Tooks, we've given you ability to unmute yourself if you like. And you also should have the ability to hit start video, and that would turn on a video if you choose. We have your video.
Good morning. Thank you. Through the president, Dr. Felsenfeld, if I may, I also have joining with me Dr. Frank LeCarry, the current chair of the commission. May we invite him to the screen as well?
That would be wonderful. Thank you. And Dr. Curry, welcome. Nope, he's not here yet.
And Dr. LeCarry, you also have the ability now to unmute yourself and turn on your camera if you choose. All right, Dr. LeCarry, we see you, and can we do a mic check? I'm not hearing your voice, Dr. LeCarry. Next to the mute and unmute button along the bottom row, there's a drop down that may give you some options to choose a different microphone.
No.
There you go.
There we go. Good. Thank you. Thanks for letting us be here this morning.
May I proceed, Dr. Felsenfeld?
You may have him. What was your question? I'm sorry.
I didn't have a question. I just said good morning.
I'm
moderator.
sorry. Somehow I was muted. May I proceed?
Oh, of course. Go ahead, Dr. Tooks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. On behalf of the Commission on Dental Accreditation, we would like to thank the Dental Board of California for offering us an opportunity to speak with you this morning. I understand that the presentation is to be about 15 minutes, and so we will proceed accordingly and hope to get to the slides that we've presented. If I could ask for the slide to be moved forward, that would be great. Thank you. I'll go ahead and proceed with the presentation, and just want to start out with a reminder to the group on the purpose of accreditation in the United States, which is really in higher education, a collegial process based on a self-assessment by an educational program and then a peer assessment of an institution or program. Its purpose is really the improvement of the academic quality of the educational program, as well as public accountability. Next slide, please. And I'm hearing a little feedback. I hope you're not hearing that.
We are not.
Okay, I'll proceed. So the purpose of the Commission on Dental Accreditation is to serve the public and the dental professions by developing and implementing accreditation standards that promote and monitor the continuous quality and improvement of dental education programs. CODA's focus is really the quality of dental education in the various disciplines under its purview. And we have a process by which educational standards are reviewed and evaluated, as well as the educational programs through a series of mechanisms of on-site review, annual reporting to the Commission, and submission of various program changes by which CODA continuously monitors the quality of the educational program. Next slide, please. Just a little on the accreditation system in the United States, for those who may not be fully aware. In the United States, accreditation is a quasi-regulatory, non-governmental process. The Commission on Dental Accreditation is recognized by the United States Department of Education as the agency that is a programmatic accreditor for dental and dental-related education programs. Accreditation is voluntary within the United States. As I indicated, it is a peer-reviewed process so that, for instance, in pediatric dentistry, we have pediatric dentists who are educators and practitioners evaluating pediatric dentistry education programs. The process is formal, systematic, and highly structured to ensure the continued quality of the process, as well as the due process, due diligence, and fairness across all of the programs that the Commission accredits. Accreditation focuses on outcomes through accepted levels of achievement. These are the accreditation standards, which are periodically reviewed and revised to ensure that they remain consistent with contemporary practice. Accreditation also ensures defined quality and helps to support change and improvement of the educational programs. Also, public accountability and protection of the students are important hallmarks in the accreditation system. I'll just remind the group that in the US, accreditation takes on a couple of different forms. There are what we would call institutional or national accreditors. And as you can imagine, they oversee the institution as a whole. I've given you an example of one of those, which might be applicable in your region, Western Association of Schools and Colleges. And then there are programmatic accreditors such as CODA, with oversight and authority of a specific field or profession. And in CODA's case, as I indicated, this would be dentistry, and the Commission accredits the scope of dentistry in various disciplines, as I'll get to here momentarily. Next slide, please. Currently, the Commission accredits over 1,400 educational programs in 21 dental and dental-related disciplines. The Commission accredits allied dental education programs, dental assisting, dental hygiene, laboratory technology, dental therapy, pre-doctoral dental education, and postdoctoral dental education programs, such as orthodontics and dentofacial orthopedics, oral and maxillofacial surgery, pediatric dentistry, etc. Additionally, CODA accredits 2 fellowship areas in dentistry, one in oral and maxillofacial surgery and the other in orthodontics and dentofacial orthopedics. The Commission operates with a cohort of about 600, perhaps more, volunteers. As I indicated, this is a peer review process. Those volunteers serve as site visitors. They serve at the review committee level of the Commission, which is an advisory process to the Board of Commissioners. And we have volunteers who serve on the Commission, such as Dr. LeCarry. We have a staff of 10 professional staff, 4 coordinators, and 5 support staff. Next slide, please. Within the accreditation process, we have a number of documents that are publicly available, and I wanted to ensure that you had access to those materials. And so you'll see hyperlinks provided to you here. The first that I have identified are the guidelines for international consultation and preliminary accreditation consultation visit. The second are the accreditation standards that are utilized in both the international consultative process as well as the US accreditation process. The third are site visit documents that are utilized again in both processes. These are the self-study, site visitor evaluation report, and other documents. And then finally, the Commission's evaluation and operational policy and procedure manual. Next slide, please. So the structure of the Commission on Dental Accreditation is, as you see here, we have site visitors who conduct the on-site review of educational programs. We have review committees that are made up of peers, as well as public members, practitioners, and educators that review the work of the site visit team in order to formulate recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. And then ultimately the Board of Commissioners, which is the decision-making body for the Commission regarding all accreditation activities. Separate from the Board of Commissioners, we have an appeal board that allows for due process and appeal should a program wish to take that course of action. And we also have an international standing committee that is separate from the Commission, which engages in review of the international consultative process, which I will describe momentarily. Next slide, please. So the International Standing Committee has several key principles regarding its work. Again, this committee utilizes the policies and procedures which have been established by the Commission and are again provided to you here. The International Standing Committee works with the premise that standards, policies, and procedures are the same for international programs seeking accreditation as those used by U.S. programs also seeking that same accreditation with CODA. And they have established that the international predoctoral accreditation process is available to fully operational established programs having graduated several classes of students. So a brand new program in an international arena would not be eligible for seeking CODA accreditation until it's been established and having graduated several classes. Next slide, please. Within the international consultative process, and we often refer to it as a PAC-V process, there are 4 key steps, really 3 steps, and the 4th being ultimately applying for accreditation with CODA. The first step is completion of a PAC-V survey instrument. This gives the International Standing Committee a general idea of the structure of the educational program. It's very cursory information on the curriculum, the facilities, its enrollment, and other factors. Should the international standing, well, I'll get into the details of each step in a moment. I won't speak on that too soon. The second step of the process is observation of a CODA site visit to a U.S. dental school. And so the International Committee has that option if it moves into step 2 of the process. The third is completion of a PAC-V self-study and a consultation visit. And then finally, the 4th being application to the Commission for accreditation. So moving into the next slide, please. And a little more detail on each of these processes. Step 1, as I indicated, is completion of a PAC-V survey. The PAC-V survey is reviewed by the International Standing Committee, and the potential outcomes could be moving to step 2, which would be the observation of a US-based site visit, requesting more information if the PAC-V survey was incomplete in some fashion, or indicating that the program is not ready to move into the next step. And that could result in no further consultation by the Commission or a focused consultative visit regarding the program. If the program is identified as not being ready to move to the next step, the program could reapply with a PAC-V survey no sooner than 1 year from the initial standing committee decision. If the program moves into stage 2 or step 2, next slide, please. The program will be invited to observe a CODA site visit in the United States. And I think that many of the programs have found this extremely helpful in understanding the Commission's expectations and process with regard to the evaluation of educational programs. The observation is scheduled at a date that's agreeable to CODA, the international program, and pending approval of the US-based program that would be observed. Those costs are incurred by the educational program making the observation, and following this site visit, Commission staff and the chair of that site visit meet with the international observers to address questions and provide consultation on the next steps in the process. Programs that have observed a US-based site visit do need to notify the Commission through the International Standing Committee of their intent to continue on in the international review process within 30 days of that observation. Next slide, please. Following the observation, again, the program will notify the Commission of its intent to continue on, and then the program has from 6 months to 3 years to submit a self-study document, which it will do so to the International Standing Committee. So the program at that point in time is developing a PAC-V self-study in preparation for a consultation visit by the Commission. The program has up to 3 years, but could certainly ask for a 6-month extension for good cause due to, a variety of different reasons that it may encounter for a delay in submission of a self-study. Next slide, please. Step 3 in the consultation process includes submission of the self-study, which is reviewed by the International Standing Committee. If the program demonstrates potential to meet the educational standards of the Commission, then a scheduled consultative comprehensive site visit will occur. And I'd like to point out to the board. I'd like to point out to the board that there are 4 consultants, and you see their roles here. And one of these consultants has some knowledge or experience in the country. Next slide. Within 60 days of that PAC-V site visit, there will be a report, and the program will then respond accordingly to inform CODA as to whether it intends to respond to the report and its expected date of response, which is left up to the educational program. The consultative visits are intended to be comprehensive and to provide the program with ample information regarding the standards and their potential ability to comply. Next slide. As I indicated, there will be a consultation report that is generated, and the program has an opportunity to respond. The report is reviewed by the International Standing Committee, again, to determine the program's potential to meet the educational standards of CODA and to proceed to the next step, which is application to the Commission as a applicant program seeking CODA accreditation. Again, the program has opportunities to provide progress if issues arise, or to also seek a review of this process again within the time frame I've indicated on this slide. Should the program be notified that it has the potential to seek CODA accreditation, it will move into the next stage. If you could advance, please. Which is the application to the Commission's accreditation process. I've outlined that process on the next slide. This process includes a full application to the Commission, the conduct of a regular site visit, again, the drafting of a draft report, receipt of an institution's response, which is then reviewed at the Commission level through its review committee and ultimately the Board of Commissioners. Next slide, please. So the application's received, the program completes a conflict of interest screening. There's again a site visit team of peers that will assess the program's application, and this is a paper review. This site visit team ultimately serves as the on-site team to the program should a site visit be warranted. And you'll notice here that the team is composed of the chair, a finance site visitor, a basic sciences site visitor, clinical, curriculum, and a national licensure site visitor. The application review occurs. If the application is incomplete, the program is advised as to the portions of the application that require additional information and given up to 6 months to respond with that additional information. Next slide, please. And once the program is deemed ready for a site visit, the visit occurs within 4 to 7 months after the application has been identified as complete and ready for the visit. As in the preliminary consultative process, there is a site visit report that is generated. And as I mentioned in a few slides back, that report then goes through the commission side of our process, which is the review committee and the board of commissioners. I've provided also some dates for you as to the review. The application process, once the program has reached stage 4 of the preliminary consultative section and then applies to CODA, that CODA application process is generally 12 to 18 months, and that would be if the application is fully in order, complete, and demonstrates that the program has potential to meet the educational standards deemed by the commission. So that time frame is on top of the time frame that we've discussed regarding the PAC-V consultative process. So with that, that gives you a very quick overview of the Commission's processes, both for international consultation as well as the CODA US accreditation process. Next slide, please. And I serve as the primary contact relating to international accreditation. My colleague, Ms. Kelly Stapleton, is our manager for predoctoral dental education and works with me both on the international and on the US system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tooks. I'm going to open it up for members of our board to ask questions, but I'm going to start with 2. Number 1, and I want to make sure I'm clear on this because I think you put it in very nicely, that there are preliminary site visits, and it looked like one of them that's done with 4 people or 5 people to see if the program in a new dental school, in a foreign country is ready to undergo the actual site visit to be a CODA accredited dental school. Is that correct?
That's correct, Dr. Felsenfeld. That initial, we call it a PAC-V, Preliminary Accreditation Consultative Visit. And there are 4 members. That's a chair who also serves as a curriculum visitor, a basic science site visitor, a clinical educator site visitor, and a clinical practitioner. And the clinical practitioner is someone that is a practicing dentist that the ADA assists CODA in identifying.
Thank you. Along with that, though, the second part is once they've gotten to this level, a foreign dental school has gotten to this level and they want to go through the full process, how many people are sent in to a dental school that is new to our country to assess whether they're meeting all of the standards, the site visitors, as it were, for an initial accreditation survey?
So for an initial accreditation survey on the commission application side of things, that would be a committee of, let me count them, 6 individuals. That would be a chairperson, a finance, basic science, clinical, curriculum, and national licensure individuals. I'm sorry, I see your mouth, but I don't, moving, but I don't hear anything.
Lots of people have said that. Sorry about that. Don't set me up. It's been a very busy morning. Can you hear me now, Dr. Tooks?
I can.
Okay, thank you. So if some, and when we go back and do either a mid-range or a re-accreditation after, what's it, 6 years, I believe it is, or 7 years for a dental school, is it the same type of a team that goes in?
It is. And one thing, it is the same type of team, the same composition of, I think I said 3, 4, 6 individuals. And what I would say on that is, and I don't want to digress too much with the technicalities of this. However, CODA has 2 application processes. Dental schools in the United States apply before they begin enrolling any students. And therefore, in the United States, a dental school actually undergoes 3 separate site visits as it's developing. It's a pre-enrollment site visit, a mid-site visit, but typically between the preclinical and clinical years, and a pre-graduation site visit. And then it goes on the CODA 7-year accreditation cycle. With an international program, because they are already fully operational and fully developed, there's 1 site visit. It's the application site visit that occurs. And then they're placed on, if they are granted accreditation, they're placed on the 7-year site visit cycle.
Thank you.
And
Second question.
may I just add one thing, just to be very clear? That is after they've had the PAC-V process. There's a site visit as part of the PAC-V process, which is intended to give them that consultation and guidance.
Thank you. That is clear. The second question I have, we are aware of a number of schools which have taken 10, 11, 12 years to become accredited by CODA. Is the time lag based on the initial PAC-V portion of it before they go to the regular site visit? And I guess the follow-up part of that is, if I am starting a new dental school in the United States, what is the time it would take from the time we apply to the time we can be accredited? Where's the lag is my question.
I can't really speak to where the lag is. I think it's, you know, it can be different. As you saw in the presentation that I've given you, the programs can take a number of years to develop their own materials, conduct the site visit, follow up after the visit, etc. So I really can't speak to, you know, any specific expectation of a time frame for the educational programs that we accredit, nor do the U.S. programs have an expectation of a time frame for accreditation. Again, the accreditation of a program is dictated by the program's ability to meet those educational standards. Once a program applies for accreditation with CODA, we generally state that it would be 12 to 18 months, but that's not to say that it couldn't take longer if there are components of an application that require additional information or are, you know, incomplete or need more input, etc.
Thank you. We're going to open it up to the rest of the board. Dr. Forge is one of our board members, and I believe she's first on the list of people who have another question. So Dr. Forge, I can see you. Go ahead, and Dr. Tooks is waiting for you there.
Well, I think you answered, Dr. Tooks, good morning, part of the question. And I guess I really want to know, since there seems to be a conflict, on average, how long do you believe this process takes in general?
I'm not able to answer that question. I know that, you know, I know that groups are interested in knowing how long a process takes. CODA does not have specific timeframes that it works with. CODA is looking at its process from the perspective of the educational standards and what is needed, and every program is treated differently in regards to not the process itself. Programs are treated all the same in that regard, but the timeline of one program doesn't necessarily equate to the timeline of another program. So we cannot measure them in that way.
So what does it depend on? Does it depend on the application process or the requirements, the report, or are you saying it may vary from school to school?
It can vary for a number of reasons. Without talking about any specific programs, it could be decisions that the commission has made that the program may or may not be ready. It could be the program's own choice to, go a little slower because of other priorities that it may have. So I really am not able to answer that question. I think you would need to, as a board, reach out to each program and ask them for, their perspective in that regard.
Thank you. Dr. Molina, you have a question.
A comment. So following up with what Dr. Fessenfeld said, the process started in 2007 and quite a few schools applied, and yet one school was accredited in 2019. That's an average of 12 years. And a second school was accredited a year or so after. Again, I know that Dr. Forge has asked and Dr. Fessenfeld has asked, why is taking so long?
I'm not able to answer that question.
Okay. Do we have any other? Ms. Cheng, Dr. Cheng.
Yes. So is there any criteria for CODA to actually facilitate and assist with a program getting accredited, or you're purely reviewing, building through the program, the preliminary and the self-study, the multiple things that you're reviewing and evaluating? And there's basically flat out denying or accepting or providing guidance of how to get approved and accredited. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So the entire intent and purpose, I think I would say, of the, sorry, am I interrupting?
No, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I thought I heard something. The PAC-V component to this process, the preliminary accreditation consultative visit component of this process, really is intended to give that guidance to the educational program so that they have a site visit team that arrives on site, assesses the program in the way that the commission would assess the program, but also give that guidance as to, to help the program understand what the commission's expectations would be should it seek accreditation. So whereas on the U.S. Process, if I were to call it that, just for ease in categorization here, CODA is more regulatory. It would come in and identify deficiencies and note those. The PAC-V side, on the other hand, is intended to give that consultative guidance to the educational program so that they understand what the standards mean, what they require, the kind of documentation that would be expected, and all of those things. So that is part of that consultation that occurs. Additionally, CODA does engage with all programs that are interested and offers I guess I would call them webinar, virtual type presentations such as this for programs that are preparing for accreditation site visits. And we post those materials on our website as well. Additionally, our site visit portion of the CODA website does give it a lot of information to educational programs as to, the expectations during a site visit process.
Thank you.
So, sorry, one more question. So are the actual findings and recommendations in your preliminary site accreditation visits, are those made public or only available to the institution requesting accreditation?
They're only made available to the institution requesting accreditation. That institution could share their reports if they choose to do so with whomever they would like. The same process is in place with the CODA accreditation that is secondary to the PAC-V.
Thank you. This is very, very helpful. Appreciate it.
Do we have any more board comments or questions? If not, Dr. Tooks, we're going to ask you to stay with us for a little bit. At the Dental Board of California, after we have a discussion at the board level, we open it up for public comment. This is not going to be question and answers, but they may have some comments to make. And if you'll stay with us, you can hear them, and then we'll let you go back to work, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any public comment for those of you who are in person here Sure. What, Senator Polanco, and then Mr. Torres.
Yes, good morning. The question that, or the comment I should say, and question, the comment is, we heard is priorities. It's their priorities. It's not California's priorities. And when we're talking about priorities as it relates to access to dental care, it may not be a priority for that international commission. But we also did not hear, we hope we can get a timeline, a very specific timeline for each particular component that is required of CODA. The statement of one international school being approved started the process in 2007, got it approved 2019. Are there other international applicants?
I think we're not going to answer questions.
I
sir.
understand.
You understand that? Okay.
And so I'm puzzled by just the lack of affirmative timetables, because we're talking about the human public safety, we're talking about healthcare, dental care, I should say, and to listen to the presentation, albeit very, very efficient with the US, but our capacity in California to build additional dental schools, our capacity is just not there, and the resources are not there. And so I'll save further comment in my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Torres, did you want to come up now? Thank you. We're going to keep this to 2 minutes, sir.
Elaborate.
Sorry.
Question. I
Okay.
can ask a question.
You can ask a question. No one's going to answer it. We can hear your question and mark it down for us to consider.
Good. My question is, well, affirmation. You have 600 volunteers, which is the backbone of CODA, right? They're all volunteers, which are all dentists. I'm assuming that I heard that correctly. What does CODA do to deal with any biases that these 600 dentists who are volunteers may have when they conduct the on-site? I know that they have one dentist from the country of the institution that is going to be doing the on-site. I did not hear if they're done at the initial assessment of the process, or if they're done at the end of that process, that they have a representative volunteer dentist that is also being part of that review process. So again, is there an ongoing process to deal with biases? Because after a while, this can become a very subjective process. And I would like to make sure that I have a better understanding, and we all have a better understanding of what CODA is doing in terms of these concerns about biases. How do they control that? How do they assess that? How do they assess as they're expecting the institutions to do it? How does CODA go about doing that? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. As usual, with any questions that come up, the board takes them into account and may or may not do follow-up. Well, we typically have a good track record of bringing information back at next board meetings. So it is noted. Thank you.
Sakai, good morning.
Hello, Tukazo Kai, California Dental Association. I heard in the presentation that when an application is under review, it could take 10 to 15 months to then have a response. And I think a question that also echoes the concerns of previous speakers is how detailed are those responses, and how much action are then the schools able to take to also see what concrete steps they could take to try to address those concerns, or what was not seen as eligible for approval, so then they could potentially reapply. And yeah.
Thank you. Any other public comment in person? Did you have a follow-up question? No, you're fine. Okay. DCA moderator, please are you with us, DCA moderator?
Sam.
Okay, please open it for comments from those who are on WebEx with us.
Certainly. If anyone would like to make a comment on the presentation, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. To reiterate, each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning, and we ask people to speak only once per agenda item. Are there any comments on the presentation? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment features?
Thank you very much. Dr. Tooks, thank you very much. Wait, Dr. Loren wants to ask one quick follow-up question.
I can ask the presenter for a question?
You want to ask Dr. Tooks?
Yes, I would like to know about the biases, how you're controlling biases and the CODA process and in international school accreditation. Is there a process for controlling these biases?
Thank you for the question. This is actually one of the criteria for recognition by the United States Department of Education is to control for conflict of interest and bias. The commission's site visitors are trained. Initially, they undergo an online training as well as a comprehensive training of preparation regarding various topics, including recognition of conflict of interest or bias. At the time a program is being evaluated, the program itself is provided a list of eligible site visitors and asked to identify any conflicts of interest that they believe would exist with anyone on that list. The site visitor themselves, in seeking to assign them to a visit, also receives our conflict of interest policy, and they themselves are asked to review that policy and identify a conflict. If one exists, they are not assigned to the visit, or if the program identifies a conflict, they would not be asked to serve on that site visit. I would also add that the commission provides periodic updates and trainings, reminders, et cetera, regarding the obligation to ensure objectivity in the process and to alert CODA if there's either a real or perceived conflict of interest. Dr. LeCarry, would you have anything to add?
No, I think you did a great job explaining that, but we work very hard to focus the site visitors on the standards that they evaluate and remove those biases in our training with them.
Thank you for the answer, but I think the bias we're speaking about is more personal. Does the evaluator want international schools accredited, something in more in that sense? And I know the conflict of interest is a little bit different, but by personal biases that one might have about the feeling of accrediting international schools that are not U.S., because I know this profession is very conservative. They're not quite open to that at this point. So that's more my question.
That's okay. We don't have to respond at this point because we are going to take a little break and we can talk. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Tooks. And we appreciate the presentation and the questions. We're going to take a break now. You're excused, and we're going to take a break for 10 minutes and come back at 10:35. Could we please take our seats? We'd like to get back to our meeting. We still have a lot of business to conduct. Shh. DCA moderator,
Yes.
okay with all of our online members?
We are waiting for Dr. Forge to come back.
Okay.
There we are. Everyone is online and available.
All right, thank you very much. We've got a lot of business to go yet, and we've had an interesting morning. We are now going to move to item 26B, which will be a presentation from the Dolores Huerta Foundation, creating a pipeline of dental practitioners through approval of foreign dental schools. Will the representatives from the foundation please come up and speak to us? We have 4 chairs and 4 people. That works out well. Do we need another chair for another person? We do? One more chair? Can we maybe get a chair put over there? Thank you, Marilla. And we'll have someone else come up. Wilbert, someone? Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Ready?
And that way we can do that. All right. Good morning, Mr. Huerta. Would you like to start off? Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I kind of just wanted to give a little background of my involvement with healthcare issues. I was the co-founder of the United Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez. And one of the first things that we did once that we were able to win collective bargaining agreements with the employers is we set up a health plan. Okay. And we named it after Senator Robert Kennedy, the Robert Kennedy Healthcare Plan, which by the way is still alive and functioning today. And not only that, but we established clinics in the Central Valley of California. We had 3 clinics in the Central Valley, one in the Salinas area, and 2 on the border in Mexicali and Tijuana for the farm workers. And the ones on the border were for the families that couldn't come across here. After leaving the United Farm Workers, and I started the Dolores Huerta Foundation, and we have also been very involved in healthcare issues. During COVID, we actually vaccinated close to 12,000 people against COVID. More recently, also, we did a survey in the connection with University of California, Merced, and we actually did a survey of 5,000 farm worker families, 5,000 farm worker families. And the way that we organize in our foundation is we have what we call house meetings. We have meetings in people's homes with the families. And each one of our organizers has to meet with 200 people in their homes. And of course, one of the things that our organizers have to do is to ask people what are their major issues that they're concerned about. Without exception, the #1 issue that all of these families have is healthcare. It's healthcare. And of course, because we are in the Central Valley of California, and we have to remember that the Central Valley, well, we might say that the San Joaquin Valley of California is the largest agricultural producing area in the world, And so when we think of all of those families that are actually out there every single day in the blistering hot sun that we just went through, picking the food that we eat. And now in the winter, doing the pruning and the planting and the preparation, for the produce and the products that will be coming up in the spring. You might say that this is one of the most important elements of our society. We also think, and people are referred to our, what they call the most elemental workers that we have in our society. And they speak of, during COVID, about the firemen and the policemen, right? Our healthcare workers. But somehow the farm workers are always left out, of that recognition and that respect. And so when we think of, the farm workers are the ones that feed everybody else, including the policemen and the firemen and the healthcare workers. And so one would think that of all of our groups, that this is the one group of people that we want to be healthy. You know, one of the biggest fights that we had, and farm workers always refer to this, and when we won our first contracts, the fact that farm workers did not have toilets in the field. They didn't have hand washing facilities in the field. People are picking produce, packing it into boxes that are not going to the car wash, picking our produce into boxes that are going directly to the supermarket. And nobody thought, wow, they're not even given the hand washing facilities, you know, and drinking water to keep them healthy. So I think we have to look at this in the larger picture, in our perspectives, and see what do we have to do to keep our farm workers healthy. Because all of us depend on them. Every single day when we sit down to eat, look at the food on our plates and be thankful. What can I do as an individual to make life better for these farm workers, okay? Well, it's wonderful to know that you all are in a position to make that happen. Because when we talk about the healthcare issues, of course they mention the dental issues. And so dentists are somewhat so far out of their reach, oftentimes, that they cannot get the type of dental care that they need. And this, of course, affects all of their health. And so I think that we have to think about this. What is it that we have to do? If we can train our people here in the United States to go to these other schools, you know, that we've talked about so much here, and learn to become dentists, and knowing because of the fact that they do not have to, you know, put themselves, mortgage themselves to become dentists, that they can come back to the community. And it has been shown and proven that the dental students that graduate from these foreign schools, that they do come back to the community. You know, they're not in West Hollywood, you know, they're in Merced or in the Stanislaus County or down in San Joaquin County, Kern County, and that's where the farm workers live and work. So I think anything we can do to make that happen. We all want to get to the same goal. So let's think how we can come together and really make dental care accessible for the poorest of the poor, for the people that are feeding us. We like to say, yes, we can. Sí se puede. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Dr. Montez wants to make a comment.
So before you continue again, I just want to thank you for being here. And I also want to share, I grew up in Dean Air, California, near Turlock and Modesto. And the farm workers were our extended families. I spent my summers grading peaches in the hot weather. And so farm working is near and dear to me. So, and you are absolutely right. California is the #1 producer of our food, and we need to be proud of that and of our farm workers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Senator?
Good morning. I see some new members.
Would you all introduce yourself for the record, please?
Yes.
I apologize.
Thank you. My name is Richard Polanco. I had the honor of serving 16 years in the legislature. I served my last 4 years as the Senate Majority Leader, and I had the opportunity during my tenure to serve as the chair of the Business and Business Professions Committee. A little bit of background just about myself. I come from very humble beginnings. I appreciate your story and your journey, Dr. Chan. As a little boy, I used to sell oranges door to door, unbeknownst to me that decades later, it would be on the same streets, this time knocking and asking people to vote for me and support me. I've legislated in many subject areas, mental health, as well as the California Voting Rights Act. I share that with you because my history and my commitment to resolving issues has really been the cornerstone of why I got into politics. I come from a generation that saw our government lie, our government, unfortunately, do things that on the other side were very helpful. Our government was investing and making a difference in the quality of life in low-income families in neighborhoods under the War on Poverty programs. And so I'm a product of the civil rights movement. I saw it in black and white. And so it framed and created for me a framework of the injustices that existed. I'm here today, once again before you, to ask that this board find a solution to the issue of access to healthcare, which you'll hear more about. Let me begin my written comments by stating that the California Dental Association sponsored AB 116 by Assemblyman Keeley. It sponsored it because it believed that there were no effective ways for the Dental Board of California to evaluate the quality of dental education received by graduates of foreign dental schools. AB 1116 eliminated the restorative technique examination, which foreign dental graduates were required to pass to become licensed in California. The California Dental Association concluded in its testimony that was provided to the Senate Business Professions Committee. California Dental Association concluded that the current RT exam is no longer sufficient indicator that dental license applicants from unaccredited foreign schools truly obtained an equivalent education to that provided by the accredited institutions or meet California's competency standards. That was part of a report at a public hearing at that point in time. I, the chair of the committee. AB 116 instead required that foreign school graduates enroll in a 2-year program at a California accredited dental school to become licensed. The committee members wanted to create additional pathways for licensing dentists in California and were sensitive to the California Dental Association's concern regarding the quality of education and the desire for a uniform standard. As such, AB 1116 created a process whereby the Dental Board of California would approve foreign dental schools by means of a rigorous and thorough evaluation process to ensure that it meet its mandate of protecting the public. When creating the foreign dental school program, the legislature in the committee report stated that AB 1116 would require the board to be responsible for the approval of foreign dental schools based on prescribed standards, including institution mission, its purpose, its objectives, education program, admissions policies, educational curriculum, faculty and staff qualifications, resources, plant and facilities, ownership and management, catalogs, student records, and maintenance of records. The bill would have required the board to establish procedures regarding the approval process. It authorized the board to contract with outside consultants or a national professional organization to survey and evaluate foreign dental schools. It would require the board to establish a technical advisory committee that would assist the board in identifying standards and review procedures and methodologies. The legislature stated its purpose for this rigorous evaluation process as providing for the evaluation of dental schools that provide an education that is equivalent to that of accredited institutions in the United States. Under the program, the Dental Board of California approved 2 foreign dental schools, De La Salle University in Guanajuato in 2004, and the State University of Medicine and Pharmacy in the Republic of Moldova in 2016. The graduates from these approved schools are required to pass the licensure standards as graduates from the accredited dental schools in California. Additionally, these graduates can only practice in California. Currently, there are approximately 800 graduates from these foreign dental schools who have passed the required California exams and are practicing today in California. Many established practices in low-income communities or are employed in community health clinics such as Altamed or Western Dental or other federally qualified clinics. It is well known that California has a shortage and maldistribution of healthcare professionals, including dentists. And the lack of healthcare providers has more significant negative impact on rural, low-income, and communities of color. The California Dental Board's approval of the dental schools was a step in the right direction toward finding solutions to the issue of shortage and maldistribution of dentists. It was the intent of the legislature to have all costs associated with the approval process be paid by the applicant. There's no cost to the State General Fund. On October 1st through the 8th of 2016, the on-site inspection and evaluation process was scheduled for a site visit. The purpose of the on-site inspection and evaluation is to obtain in-depth information concerning all administrative educational aspects of the dental educational program. The on-site visit permits the technical advisory team to access the educational program's compliance with the institutional standards that are identified in the California Code of Regulations, Chapter 2, Article 1, Section 1024.1. The site visit verifies and supplements the information contained in the application for approval that was submitted by the university. Experience has shown that conference methods for conducting a site visit is widely favored, and effective conferences are scheduled with identified administrators, faculty, students at specific times. In addition to formal scheduled conferences, the site technical team members meet informally to discuss department, division programs with chairmen, faculty members, and students throughout the site visit. Program administrators are excused during conferences scheduled with faculty members, students, and invited institutional staff. The executive sessions in the site team are a critical part of the on-site evaluation. These sessions are scheduled at intervals during the day and evening and provide time for site visit team to meet privately and to prepare its findings and recommendations. There's a great track record here in California with California students enrolling and graduating from foreign dental schools and passing the dental exam and creating practices in communities that need them. In closing, members, I ask the board to consider granting a provisional approval to allow the matriculation of the California students with the understanding that this board has taken a position to have any foreign dental schools with the understanding that they go through CODA. We would ask for a provisional to allow the matriculation to begin. The need is great. It's not going away. And so in closing, I want to give the others as part of the panel to share with you the actual documentation of need, where it's located, where our dentists are in fact. I will show you here. This is the Foreign Dental School Application Survey that the department, the California Dental Board provides to any foreign dental school that has all the elements that are listed in CODA. Here, the applicant submits Here's the results of the site visit that was taken. And I'll read the site visit purpose. The California legislature recognizes the need to ensure the graduates of foreign dental schools who have received an education that is equivalent to that of accredited institutions in the United States, and that adequately prepares the students for the practice of dentistry, are subject to the same licensure requirements as graduates of other approved dental schools. It is the intent of the Dental Board of California to provide for evaluation of foreign dental schools and approval of those schools that provide an education that is equivalent to that of similar accreditation institutions in the United States. That's had been submitted. This is what you ultimately accepted, which brought forth the approval that was adopted to move forward with this particular foreign dental school. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We have other people at the table. We have to keep it relatively brief. You're exceeding your 20 minutes already, so please summarize your comments as you can.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Is the light on? Gotta be green.
It is on.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I've been tasked, I'm Jessica Shoemaker. I work with the senator and the Dolores Huerta Foundation on the issue of foreign dental schools. I like to joke that I'm a recovering politician because I was a school board member and a city council member, but I am no longer. And so that's how I came across the senator. I've known him since I was a kid and he was a senator. He was one of the people who sparked my interest in politics. But I'm here to talk about the 2 universities that were approved, because I think it's significant to point out that these are not schools that were just approved. They're not DeVry's or UEI's or schools like that. These are foundational institutions in the countries where they are and have been established for many years. In the case of the, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to call it Moldova. Moldova was actually founded in 1945, their medical school, and established their School of Dentistry in 1959. They cooperate with schools in the US, Romania, Russia, France, Czech Republic to explore various techniques. In their first year, students are trained to do precise work through practical lessons. Beginning on the 3rd year, students are integrated into afternoon clinics and begin treating patients. At the end of the 5th year, students take theoretical exams in all courses. In addition to these exams and accompanying clinical requirements, the students also take practical tests to assess their professional abilities. So when these students come to the US, they are coming here with practical experience, years of practical experience from their education in Moldova. La Salle follows a similar pattern. It was founded in 1975. It's ranked as one of the best dental schools in Mexico. It was actually provisionally approved by the Dental Board in 2002 and received full approval in 2004. So it has been successfully graduating dentists into California for 22 years. And I think that's important when we discuss later on the CODA issues. Can you move the slide forward too? That one, perfect. This slide and the corresponding arrows points to areas where graduates of these schools are practicing. So when you see all the arrows in the Los Angeles area, this isn't the Brentwoods and Palisades sections of LA. It's Bell Gardens, Cudahy, Maywood, the community, South LA, Southeast LA, the communities that need them. You have Riverside County and its farm workers, San Bernardino and its farm workers. You have San Diego area. And again, it's not the San Diego, La Jolla area of San Diego. It's the El Centros, La Mesas, Chula Vista, where they are practicing. these are areas of need, and it clearly shows throughout the state, all the way up to the border, areas that are critically underserved.
But have dentists practicing there.
I know, that's what I said.
Yeah, I just said the point here is these red arrows are pointing where practices are now in existence, whereas before they were not.
Okay, and then now I will hand it over to Francisco.
Thank you. I've been before you a number of times. Glad to be here again. I'm an attorney. I represent Moldova. I'll make my comments brief. The issue for us has been that there was a successful program. As we indicated to you, we have many dentists practicing in great communities. And for reasons that I understand better now, this board decided in 2019 at the last Sanford review to eliminate the program. And I understand that you no longer wanted to do the evaluation process, even though the evaluation process, and I put it on the agenda, by statute was one that was done through technical advisory committees, very similar to Cora, as I was listening to her. Resources paid for by the applicant, but the central issue has been Cora. The law at that time, AB 1519, indicated that these schools needed to be approved by Cora by January 1st, 2024. We did our research immediately and we realized that that was simply impossible. And I think the presentation by Cora has conveyed it to you that there really is no way, and I'm not sure what the underlying rationale was at that time, to essentially create this deadline. And we've been fighting or advocating regarding this issue because it's so detrimental to the process. The schools have not taken any more students. They can't guarantee Cora approval. And so as I look at that, and I'll take over your spot. As I look at the Cora process, 2007, we had, I think, 12 or 13 foreign dental schools apply. 2019 was the very first time Cora took action on a school. And it was Saudi Arabia. It approved them. Shortly thereafter, or right in that time frame, they denied La Salle. And about a year ago, I think they approved Turkey. It is a process that is convoluted, difficult, and inapplicable to our situation. And so we've been coming before you to try to transcend that. You've seen me come here. We've given you a lot of legislation. I'm the legislative person. So, and I feel like every time I come and there's a bill that we put forward with the support of some legislators. And our very first bill to you was, I won't even get into the numbers. Our very first bill was an attempt to reinstate the program. And we came before you for that, and it was opposed by the CDA.
25 minutes.
And it was done. It wouldn't get through. Our next year, we thought, okay, we'll go through Cora. We'll abide by what you want us to do, but give us more time. Excuse me. I'm Marco Rubio here. So the second time we came before you, we had only one change, and it was change the January 1st, 2024 deadline to December 2030, because we knew it would take that long. That was also opposed by the CDA. And the issue there, and I'll bring it to you because it called on my reputation. And it was the committee report that killed the bill. And the committee report states as follows, because I want that on the record. The author has made repeated assertions that the timeline for schools to receive Cora accreditation is, quote, unrealistic, arguing that the approval process is, quote, 8 years. This claim is easily refuted. The Cora process for approving foreign dental schools was essentially established at the beginning of 2016. And Cora approved the first school located in Saudi Arabia in August 2019, making the 8-year claim by me dubious. It was that language that was relied upon by legislators, proffered by the CDA, that killed the legislation. And so we welcome Cora coming before you to convey to you the difficulty and the time that it takes to do this, and how this requirement has essentially completely undermined the mission of the schools and has created problems. You had a solution in place for access to care, and now it's gone. Now it's gone. That was me going through a bunch of stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Clear. Very briefly, we're way over time, please.
Sounds good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosa Arzu. I am the Senior Director for Quality of Care, Medical and Dental Innovation. And I've been with my organization, Ultimate, for almost 17 years. In my role, I created a pipeline in 2018 of culturally competent dentists because since that time we have a challenge with workforce. We try to expand, we provide face-to-face services, but also teledentistry to be able not just to treat, but also prevent the disease. And I tell my patients, as long as your baby has a mouth, we can start the prevention program because we believe that caries is preventable. We all know that. In the our pipeline, we have worked with Tufts University. We're starting with USC as well, La Salle, Moldova, and our goal is to make sure that we can continue expanding. And as you know, this year there was an expansion on Medi-Cal, so there is a significant numbers of new members that have medical benefits. And I'm not sure if you've seen it in your practices or have heard, but we have a big chronic issue after the pandemic. We are seeing a lot of patients with traumas, with completely aware that they need a full mouth restoration. Now, the big question has always been, how do we treat these patients? Because they have Medi-Cal, and you know the reimbursements are very low, but we have to find solutions, and that means we need to have more dentists that will be able to provide these services to these patients. As the director, I am responsible for the quality of care in a safe environment of our patients. We are highly regulated. I heard Joint Commission, yes, every 2 years we have to go through that process. They not only do chart reviews, they also follow patients. They want to make sure that every single patient that walks in our doors is getting the quality of care that they need. I have hired at least 11 dentists from the international schools. I have 4 directors that are from the international schools. I strongly believe that every dental school has great dentists, but they might also need others that will need to be calibrated. And we also do that. I have the privilege to work with a very honorable dentist, Dr. Jose Luis Ruiz, who has donated his time to help me calibrate because unfortunately, we all think that when they graduate, they know how to do a pulpotomy. And you will be surprised that some dentists are not competent in doing it. So at this point, I hear you, I am with you. I think the safety, it doesn't matter which patient it is. The low-income population deserves quality of care in a safe environment. But as a federally qualified health centers, we're struggling to find dentists. Just remember, we are seeing these low income, we don't really get the funding that other insurances, or if you want cash patients, they cannot afford that. So how can we pay these high salaries that some of these dentists are expecting? And I understand why they're expecting these salaries, you know, loans and things like that. We cannot afford it. So I ask that we look for solutions to continue working with these pipelines that are really helping us to address, it's not just the oral health, it's the overall health. We know the mouth is part of the body. So anything that is going to cut this pipeline, it's going to affect the oral health. And if we don't look at from the health perspective, let's think about our budget. Look at how much we're spending. And I just saw that the budget for dental care and medical care, actually, it's about the same. So we know we have a huge problem, not just to treat the disease, but to prevent the disease. And I, as the director, I have the responsibility to find dentists that also don't want to just drill, that want to be committed to public health. And that's the advantages that I have seen. And I also have a patient that wanted to bring his testimony. I cannot share the name, but I will be happy to introduce this patient to you. He drove from San Diego. I don't know why they were not able to treat him here. He's a veteran.
Let's finish up, please.
But I think this is very important because this is the voice of the community. And I know I have nothing to gain, but he didn't get the care that he needed, veteran with all wear teeth, and we were able to help him. So I ask you to please, let's look for solutions to continue with these pipelines and be able to continue expanding the care of the patients that they deserve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all five of you. We're going to have board comments or questions. I see none. What?
Did you have something to add? Because you're well over the 20 minutes that we had negotiated for your time. So it'll have to be very brief.
A lot
Thank
more
you.
on our calendar
Our
to go.
apologies, we were told 45 minutes, so we prepared a presentation.
45 minutes?
No, I specifically said 20 minutes of presentation with 45 minutes for questions and answers from the board
Great, that's
members.
what I mean. So I have the pleasure of giving you all a solution. So hopefully my proposed solution will invoke the questions so we can answer and together come up with the solution. It's very simple. I mean, my colleagues have already presented and illustrated that we have two schools that have been approved by the board in the past who have extensive histories of successful treatment. So our proposed solution is that we allow that these two schools who have been previously approved by the board, who have an extensive history of providing quality services and are highly reputable universities in their respective countries, be allowed to matriculate students as they go through the CODA process. I do think the solution strikes a balance because, you know, I am quickly, my name is Ana Maria Quintana. I'm councilwoman for the city of Bell. I want to make sure that the practitioners that come to these communities are qualified. I don't want just anyone to come and serve my community. And I feel very comfortable that these two schools can provide those services, one, because they've been vetted before, because they've gone through an extensive process. In addition to make sure, because we've talked about how expensive dental school is and all the limitations that go forth, the legislation that we want to propose for next year will require that the graduates of these programs will serve in a capacity for 2 years in these low-income areas. And to make very clear, that requirement, because we've been told, you know, that might be problematic, that requirement to serve in a low-income community is not reinventing the wheel. That's actually part of what exists in statute now. Currently, if there are dentists who are practicing in different states, they can get a license in California through the licensure through credential program. So the proposal is to use the same requirements that exist right now in statutes and put those in place. So we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel. So what we ask is that people from California go to these two schools. When they graduate, they come back to California. They take the exact same exams that's required of anyone who's going to be practicing in the state. And then they would practice for 2 years in order to guarantee that we provide and address the problem of maldistribution of dentists in our areas. So that's our proposed solution. We welcome any feedback that you may have.
Thank you. Once again, any board comments or questions? I didn't see any earlier, so we're going to open this up to the public. You may stay here and listen to what public comments are. It will not be a question and answer. They can only speak to us. So are there any in-person public comments on this topic? One of you give the CDA people a chance to sit down and make their comments. Thank you, Senator.
Hello, Tuka Zokai with the California Dental Association. I just want to first say CDA is always pleased to see folks that traditionally are not working with oral health to value oral health and access. We have always been in complete alignment with the challenges for access to care for dental care access, especially in the Valley and other areas within California where there is a maldistribution of providers. When CDA has asked for the CODA process to see where De La Salle and Moldova were within the CODA process, we wanted to see that there was this active application, understanding that it is not appropriate for the dental board to approve different dental schools for licensure. However, we do agree that there should be this extension, and we are in alignment with the proposal for an extension for those who are at Moldova and De La Salle to be able to go through the process that has historically been within California. However, we would like to see this proof or reports of the schools actively going through the CODA process. And like I asked earlier today, to show what is the feedback that they are getting from CODA. So we want this to be a transparent process for the safety of those within California, for this process to ultimately go through CODA and make an equitable pathway. But again, thank you to everyone who's been working on addressing this issue. We're in complete alignment that we need to do something.
Thank you, Ms. Updike. Dr. Witcher.
Yeah, Dr. Bruce Witcher, CDA. Basically echoing Ms. Zokai's comments. I think that we feel that the CODA process is a fair and equitable process. We already have a letter that was handed out to you all from DLSIA indicating they anticipate completing the self-study process by June of 2025. So they're actively engaged in moving forward with that. And that would be in keeping, I think, with the intent of this proposal, which is to allow matriculation. So there is a pipeline, and yet at the same time, assure there are some milestones as they go through the CODA process. So we're sure that they are actually following through on that. So that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Dr. Witcher. Any other in-person comments? Seeing none. Are there public comments from individuals who are participating via WebEx? Will the DCA moderator please facilitate the lines for public comment?
Certainly. We have opened up the WebEx public comment features. You may raise your hand to get in line to make a comment, or you may look for the question mark icon and just click that, type the word comment and click send. We do have a request for comment from someone logged into WebEx as Howard Kim. As a reminder to all, we ask you to speak once per agenda item, 2 minutes time limit with a 30-second warning. And Mr. Kim, I am sending you a request to unmute your microphone. You're unmuted.
Howard Kim. I am one of the dental directors for Via Care Community Health Center in East Los Angeles. I'm also the LA Dental Society president. I represent 1,900 members, including 600 students. I wanted to speak about this issue and kind of point out to all the board members and everyone in attendance that California children have among one of the worst rates of dental disease in the nation. An LA Times article stated that a national survey from 2020 to 2021 found that 14.8% of the state's children ages 1 to 17 had decayed teeth or cavities in the last 12 months, ranking us 47 out of 51 states and the District of Columbia, and Louisiana and Wyoming faring worse. And so I kind of wanted to lay out the reality of the situation in California, where we need culturally competent care and dentists that Mr. Torres spoke about and this panel spoke about, how important it is and how much of a difference it makes. I work in East LA. Luckily, I speak Spanish because I took 4 years of Spanish. But to have a culturally competent dentist, and the La Salle has a Spanish-speaking program, to have a culturally competent dentist, it's a game changer in our health center and for our patients and quality of care. And the reality of it is that a lot of our private schools, I went to USC as a dental student. People are graduating with $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 in dental school loans. And with these 2 approved schools, I know their cost is much less.
30 seconds.
I know their cost is much less. So I think it opens the avenue for them to serve in areas that are the most need. I know we do have 6 dental schools in California, but if you're graduating with $700,000 in student loan debt, your motivations may be different than some of these schools, these foreign dental schools who graduate with less debt, and they're willing to go back to their communities and contribute to this need of solving of these patients that need this
2
care
minutes.
but
Thank
are
you.
not getting it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Your time is up, but we hear you.
And this is the moderator. I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Dr. Montez is going to make a final comment in this area, I believe, and then we're going to move on.
Couple comments here. So again, I do want to bring to the attention of the board that you did receive a letter dated November 5th, 2024 from De La Salle. This is the council who is representing De La Salle. They are in the process of becoming CODA accredited. And as Dr. Witcher had shared, they are submitting, they had submitted a application and they're on track for June 2025. They did share that their original 2018 submitted application did not meet the CODA application criteria, so they pulled that back and started the process over. But they did want the board to know very clearly that they support the CODA standards and the process, and they have retained a team to help them get through the CODA approval process. My other comment is that it's very important, again, to remind the board that the board does not have the authority to approve foreign dental schools at this time, even a provisional approval. That law was changed. And also the regulations that were established for this approval was back in 2000. So the regulations have not changed since then. So the approval that was given was actually based on 2000 regulations that are 24 years old. So we need to be very sensitive to that, even if we did have the authority. Also, too, I think it's really important to, again, a just gentle reminder, the schools can continue to matriculate students. They could come and participate in a 2-year CODA program here and become licensed, be eligible. So there is still, a pathway. It's just a longer pathway. Now, having said all that, though, I do think it's important, in my opinion, for the dental board to continue working with these stakeholders and to help with be engaged in any legislation, because I think we all agree that there is a need and that the contract process is an excellent strategy. I also think the transparency with CODA is extremely important so that we have a better understanding. So I think it would be important if Moldova would work with the board and keep us appraised of the application and the timeline, because again, I feel like our board members would want to know if there's any obstacles. We don't have authority over CODA, but certainly if it is hindering the ability to get the schools accredited and meet the needs of our California population, that would be important. And then certainly we can also work with other departments that can deal more directly with healthcare. We have the managed healthcare, we have the Department of Education, so there's other avenues that we could bring in and work on this. So again, I just wanted to share those points because I think, again, these are important discussions, and I'm hoping Dr. Felsenfeld and the board will direct the staff to continue these conversations. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Molina.
Just a comment. In terms of the pathway that Dr. Montes is referring, that process of having their students matriculate and go to 5 years of dental school and then come back here and go to a dental school here will be so expensive, because that process is 2 years, and they only have about 15 slots per school, and some schools don't have it. So there aren't that many available positions, and the 2 years are really, really expensive. I think it's like $250,000 per program. So, even though that is a pathway, it wouldn't be, again, we're back to how prohibitive it is to go to the schools and then ask them to go in and serve in underserved areas.
I want to just to be back on her. I know.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We are done. All right. This is not a place for back and forth. These are board member comments, and we cannot engage in that. You can go privately and talk to us later, or send it to Dr. Montes. We are aware of the issues, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be impolite, but at the same time, we have to continue on with our agenda.
And if I may, we have to be respectful for the other presentations that were given allotted time. And that's why I want to encourage the board to continue these discussions,
We have
because
your message.
there is a path forward. We just have to get there.
No, I understand.
You have
but-
your message.
But under the law, I want to include on the record that a letter will be submitted, and this is a legal requirement. A letter will be submitted that has to now be part of the record from the Black Caucus, who are supportive of this program, because when we're seeking culturally competent practitioners, they're supportive of Moldova because classes are taught in English. So that would allow to fill the void that exists in African-American communities. So I am simply abiding by the law and making sure that that's included on the record.
Thank you. We are done with this. At this time, I want to thank everybody. Ms. Huerta, thank you. It's good to see you again. We appreciate the work that you're all doing. So we're going to move on now. is Mr. Well, I don't know. Everyone wants to keep working a little bit. We can take a lunch in a little bit if we have to. All right. Is Mr. Nelson here? Oh, he's way in the back. All right. We're going to move on. To item number 27A, the legislative proposal to amend the BPC section 1628 and 1633 regarding dentist licensure requirements. Brent Nelson, you're back. Good
I'm
morning,
back.
sir, and let us continue on.
Very good. Good morning. My name is Brant Nelson. I am the Legislative and Regulatory Specialist for the Dental Board of California. I will be presenting agenda item 27A, which is found on page 286 of your board meeting materials. I'm going to give a little bit of background, and our staff prepared a very nice and comprehensive summary, which is in the materials for you. But my hope today is just to concisely frame the issue and present it to you so that you can make some choices. So here's the background. To obtain a dentist licensure from the Dental Board of California, applicants are required, among other things, to have taken and received a passing score on the portfolio exam or successfully complete the clinical and written examination administered by either the Western Regional Examining Board or American Board of Dental Examiners within 5 years prior to the date of the dentist license application. And this is pursuant to Business and Professions Code 1632. In accordance with the amendments made by Senate Bill SB 1453, the portfolio exam will no longer be an examination option beginning on January 1st, 2025. Pursuant to Section 1633, an applicant who fails to pass the examination required by the section by Section 1632 after 3 attempts is not eligible for further reexamination until the applicant has successfully completed a minimum of 50 hours of education for each subject the applicant failed in the last unsuccessful examination. The remedial coursework must be taken at a dental school approved by either the Commission on Dental Accreditation, CODA, or a comparable organization approved by the board and must be completed within a period of 1 year from the date of notification of the applicant's third failure. In October 2023, board staff and ADEX discussed implementing a process to notify the board when an applicant fails any portion of the examination after 3 attempts. The applicant would not be allowed to retake that section a 4th time prior to completing the minimum of 50 hours of remediation in failed sections. On August 6, 2024, board staff met with ADEX to discuss recent dentist license applicants who failed portions of the ADEX exam after 3 attempts. In this meeting, it was discovered that ADEX had allowed applicants to sit for reexamination without notifying the board. ADEX also revealed an inability to track applicants for California licenses. ADEX informed the board that it is their policy that if an applicant fails any portion of the ADEX examination after 3 attempts, the applicant is allowed to do reexamination without any educational remediation required by Section 1633. The candidate must retake the entire exam. As a means of supporting the board, ADEX agreed to post the requirements of BPC Section 1633 on their website for applicants who seek California dentist licensure. So in response to the conflict over examination attempts, examination retake requirements, and remediation education necessary to retake examinations, board staff recommend amending BPC Sections 1628 and 1633 as reflected in the attached legislative proposal and discussed further in the materials. This recommendation seeks to clarify the application and examination process, maintain patient protections, and reduce delays in processing time for applicants.
There we are. You have more on that?
I'm just going to summarize here. I just want to briefly mention the 2 proposals here. They're in the board materials, but a lot of this has to do with kind of, well, the first part has to do with what I just discussed. The second part has to do with the proposed amendments to BPC Section 1628. We have some outdated language in there, and so there's always some cleanup involved, as you're all aware. So the action requested is that board staff requests the board to discuss the information presented in this memo in the attached legislative proposal.
Hey,
That's all.
is there any board discussion, any questions about this? Dr. Molina?
Yes. In terms of the remedial courses that you mentioned, has that curriculum been developed and given to the dental schools in the area?
Go ahead.
Paige is going to come up and explain this. Thank you.
Morning, Ms. Regali, you're here.
Good morning. Long time no see, it feels like. My name is Paige Regali. I am the Chief of Administration and Compliance here at the Dental Board. In my former position, I was the Chief of Licensing and Examination, so very familiar with a lot of the Sunset Bill changes, as well as the proposals that are before you today. So to answer your question, Dr. Molina, our previous process in law, well, current process in law under Business and Professions Code 1633 is that the way that it's written is that any licensure applicant under section 1628, so a clinical examination applicant essentially, who passes the examination or who fails the examination is required after 3 attempts of failure in any section would be required to retake that section after completing 50 hours of remedial education at a board or CODA approved school. So the remedial education has to be in a university setting as it's required, and then they were to provide proof to the board substantiating that the requirements have been met, and we would then allow them to retake the examination or the failed sections of the examination. After we met with ADEX, which now, as we know, is the only clinical examination currently that the board accepts as portfolio is phasing out and was underutilized, and as REB and ADEX had merged previously. ADEX was requiring already that any applicants who failed 3 times, similar to our requirements, retook the entire exam. We were requiring that they retook each section. So if they failed the endodontics section, they would have to retake that. If they failed, what they consider their written portion, the DLOSCI, I believe it's called, they would have to retake that one section. ADEX actually requires a full exam retake. So after that meeting, we decided that it wasn't it wasn't relevant for our statute to continue, as there wasn't really that connection with ADEX where it was proof of compliance for us, because ADEX already had that requirement and required them to retake the entire exam anyways. However, they didn't have the remedial ed as far as we know, but they did have to prove their competence in the sections in order to pass the exam to be licensed.
Okay. Dr. Molina, you good?
Okay.
Okay.
So how are they proving their competency if they're not taking the remedial courses?
Because they're retaking the examination and they're passing the examination. So I'm not sure exactly what ADEX's overarching process is and how they require or what they require that they do. We just know that they require them to retake the entire exam if they fail 3 times. So previously, where we required the remedial ed, and for one section, they have their own process where they require a total re-exam.
So they're not going to be following what you had suggested of taking the remedial classes and then taking the portion that they fail. They're not going to do that.
So they wouldn't be required to take the remedial education and provide proof to the board to retake one section after 3 failed attempts.
Just take the whole exam.
They just retake the entire exam, correct?
And because this is a national exam, it's consistent with what other states do, and we, don't have concerns internally as a public safety issue because they do have to essentially pass the exam.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Any other board comments on this before? Okay, seeing none, would you like to make, we have 3 options here on page 289 of our handout. Would someone like to make a motion? Back to that. I will make a motion then, since I did a bunch yesterday. I was hoping someone would help me out today. Option 1 is what we're going to move. I would like to move to approve for submission to the California State Legislature the legislative proposal to amend B&P sections 1628 and 1633 regarding dental licensure requirements as written. Another crack at the entire exam. That's not my proposal, obviously, but another crack at the entire exam. It's more restrictive in some ways. So now you have to take the whole thing again. All right, that's my motion. Is there a second?
You second.
Mackenzie, I thank you. Mackenzie seconds it. Is there any board discussion on this issue? Seeing none, the motion is before us. Is there any public comment on the motion as it is without my extra verbiage? Seeing none, would the moderator please facilitate the comments from those participating via WebEx?
Certainly. This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the motion, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. And we do not have any call-in users, so we do not need separate instructions for them. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning, and we ask people to speak only once per agenda item. Are there any comments on the motion? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close those public comment features?
Thank you. And Board Secretary, please call the roll and record the votes for this agenda item.
Motion, Dr. Lighting Secretary, motion to approve for submission to the California State Legislature, the legislative proposal to amend Business and Profession Code Section 1628 and 1633 regarding dental license requirements. Chan, aye. Chang.
Chang, aye.
Chang, aye. David.
David, aye.
David, aye. Felsenfeld.
Felsenfeld, yes.
Felsenfeld, aye. Forge.
George, aye.
Forge, aye. Larin, aye. McKenzie.
McKenzie, yes.
McKenzie, aye. Medina.
Dina's
Absent. Molina.
Molina, aye.
Molina, aye. Olage. Olage, aye. Pacheco. Absent. Itakur.
Aye.
Itakur, aye. You.
You, aye.
You, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 27B, legislative proposal to amend Business and Profession Code Section 1635.5 regarding licensure by credential pathway requirements. Once again, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld. This begins on page 292 of your meeting materials. I'll provide some background. The Dental Practice Act establishes several pathways for dentist license candidates to obtain licensure by the Dental Board of California. One of the pathways, licensed by credential, is unique in that an applicant may qualify for board dentist licensure based on out-of-state licensure and clinical practice experience. LBC is the only pathway that does not require a doctor of dental surgery or doctor of medicine and dentistry degree from a dental school approved by the board of accredited, there's some fancy words in here. Degree from a dental school approved by the board or medicine. Yeah, I'm off here.
It's any dental school that's accredited
Right.
or approved by the board. That's
Thank
where
you.
you're gonna be.
Yeah. So the LBC pathway does not require completion of examinations as a condition of licensure. The LBC pathway is designed to accommodate candidates with out-of-state clinical practice or a degree from a foreign dental school. So SB 1453, which was the board sunset bill, signed by Governor Newsom and chaptered by the Secretary of State on September 22nd, 2024, requires LBC applicants to provide the following: proof that the applicant has either been in active clinical practice in another state, district, or territory of the United States, has been engaged in full-time non-clinical practice requiring an active dentist license for federal, state, or local public health programs in another state, district, or territory of the United States for at least 5 years immediately preceding the application, or has been a full-time faculty member in an accredited dental education program in an active clinical practice for a total of at least 5,000 hours within the past 5 years immediately preceding the date of the application under this section. Notably, due to the new structure of the provision that inserts non-clinical practice between the two active clinical practice pathways, the requirement to provide proof of having worked at least 5,000 hours within the previous 5 years inadvertently was separated from the first active clinical practice pathway. As such, under SB 1453, the 5,000 hour requirement now only applies to applicants using the full-time faculty member in active clinical practice pathway. As such, board staff recommend amendments to clarify the intent of BPC section 1635.5 related specifically to the clinical practice requirement by restructuring the active clinical and non-clinical pathways. The proposed amendments attached would reinstate 5,000 hours in the past 5 years immediately preceding the date of the application for active clinical practice applicants. The proposed amendments would also restructure the pathways to clarify the requirements of each pathway. The new pathway restructuring also would require renumbering of subsequent paragraphs. So board staff also recommend repealing BPC section 1635.5 subdivision C, which establishes a board reporting requirement that passed 16 years ago, and repealing subdivision F, which established specific requirements for LBC licenses issued before January 1st, 2006. These provisions are just outdated. Again, this is cleanup language.
Cleanup language mostly. And
Yep.
I think Dr. Montez wants to make a comment
Okay.
if you're done.
I was just going to mention, so the action that we're requesting, board staff requests the board to discuss information presented in this memo and the attached legislative proposal for recommendation to the California State Legislature. That's all.
Dr. Montez.
So if I may, real quick, just as we had mentioned during the Dental Assisting Council meeting yesterday, that we recognize there's cleanup in the Sunset Bill. And so this is an example of one of those legislative proposals that we were able to prepare in time for this meeting. So there will be more to come. Thank you.
I'll move approval for option 1.
Okay. We have Dr. Chan seconds that. So we have the actual motion on the table now. We do have an option still to have additional board comment on that. If no one has any further comments, we will open it up to comments from people in person. I think Ms. Okai is coming.
Tukas Okai, CDA. The intention of this licensure pathway. Whoa, can you hear me? Yeah. The goal of this licensure pathway was for those that want to work in public health settings. So as long as we maintain the integrity of the goal for those that are able to be licensed in other states and then can come work in California, but maintaining that licensure, but working primarily in public health, the scope of the appropriate scope. So that's all in alignment with CDA's initial goal of this language within the Sunset Bill.
Okay, thank you. Any additional in-person comment? Seeing none, would the DCA moderator please facilitate the lines for public comment from those participating via WebEx?
Certainly. This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a comment on the motion, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment into the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning, and we ask speakers to speak only once per agenda item. We do have a raised hand from someone logged into the WebEx as Damian Alvarado. Damian, I'm sending you a request to unmute. You're unmuted.
Everyone on the board, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so briefly, I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Damian Alvarado, foreign graduate from Dominican Republic, previously licensed in the state of Massachusetts under a restricted license, which I know was mentioned earlier by the board for a year. Currently a second-year GPR here in the state of California in Fresno Community Regional and the VA Central Valley. Member of the CDA and Fresno Madera Dental Society as well. And most recently a candidate for the UCSF Fresno or maxillofacial surgery residency program now, which requires licensure in the state. Even so, my question to the board would be, through the credentials, even after working more than 5,000 hours between the residency program and in the state of Massachusetts, and having 2 years in a CODA accredited program and the ADEX as well, I still, because of the cap of the 2,000 hours on the residency program, I still do not meet the credentials. Would the board consider the credentials of ADEX and the residency program as 5,000 hours? If those hours, would they not cap it at 2,000 hours? Or if not, would the board consider a permit for education if one
30
still,
seconds.
If one still wishes to remain here in the Central Valley, continuing their education and serving the underserved population?
Thank you. What we can do with you, we can't answer your question here, obviously, but if you'll send in your discussion points and whatever proof that you want us to look at to Dr. Montez at the dental board, we will take it up at that point by staff.
And at this point, I do not see any further requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Please do, and we do have a vote to take, I believe. Will Board Secretary please take the vote?
Secretary moved, the motion is to move to approve for submission to the California State Legislature, the legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code Section 1635.5 regarding licensure by credential pathway requirements. Chan.
Chan, aye.
Chan, I. Chang.
Chang, I.
Chang, I. David.
David, aye.
David, I. Felsenfeld.
Feldenfeld, yes.
Felsenfeld, yes. Forge.
Forge, aye.
Forge, I. Larin, I. McKenzie.
Kinsey, yes.
McKenzie, I. Medina, absent. Molina.
Molina, aye.
Molina, I. Olage. Olage, I. Pacheco, absent. Thakur.
Thakur, aye.
Thakur, I. You.
You, aye.
You, I. Motion passes.
Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 27C, legislative proposal to amend Business and Professions Code Section 1638.1 regarding the EFCS permit credentialing committee member removal. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Dr. Frostfeld. This starts on page 301 of your materials, and I'll provide some background. The Dental Board of California is authorized to issue an elective facial cosmetic surgery permit to individuals who meet specific qualifications. Business and Professions Code Section 1638.1, subdivision E1 requires the board to appoint a credentialing committee or EFCS permit credentialing committee or committee to review the qualifications of each applicant for an EFCS permit. Upon completion of the review of an applicant, the committee shall make a recommendation to the board on whether to issue or not issue a permit to the applicant. BPC Section 1638.1 Subdivision E establishes committee membership of 5 members and member selection, solicitation, meeting, and quorum requirements. However, the statute does not establish any committee term limits or member removal provisions. Therefore, board staff recommend amendments attached here to BPC Section 1638.1 to add new paragraph 5 to subdivision E. Specifically, the legislative proposal would establish statutory authority of the board to remove an EFCS permit credentialing committee member for continued neglect of duties required by law or for incompetence or unprofessional or dishonorable conduct. This language is modeled on BPC sections 106 and 1605 applicable to board members and discussed in these materials.
Okay. I'm sorry. Are you done, Mr. Nelson? Or
I am now. Action requested. Action requested. Board staff requests the board to discuss the information presented in this memo and the attached legislative proposal for recommendation to California State Legislature.
about to do that, so all right.
I just, again, I want to explain the rationale for this proposal. We hold the dental assisting council members and board members to good attendance, taking training, reading materials, and being prepared before the meeting. So we think it's very important for this committee to be held to those same standards. And if there are issues, that we have the option of removing them. So you can read between the lines, but this is very important. Thank you.
Okay, so
You motion.
we already have a motion. I think Dr. Yu made the motion it's option number 1. Dr. Yu, is that correct? Want to read that into the
Move
record?
To approve or submission to the California State Legislature's the legislative proposal to amend Business and Professional Code Section 1638.1 regarding removal of an EFCS permit credentialing committee member.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Dr. Chan seconds that. Okay, is there any further board discussion on the motion? Seeing none, is there any in-person public comment? Seeing none, are there any public comments from the participating members via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for public comment.
Certainly, if anyone would like to make a comment on the motion, you may look for the hand icon, click that. Look for the question mark icon, click that. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the motion? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
Yes, please. Board Secretary, please call the roll and record the votes for this item.
Okay, the motion is to approve for submission to California State Legislature the legislative proposal to amend Business and Profession Code 1638.1 regarding removal of an EFCS permit credentialing committee member. Chan.
Chan, I.
Chan, I. Chang.
Chang, I.
Chang, I. David.
David, I.
David, I. Felsenfeld.
Felsenfeld, yes.
Felsenfeld, I. Forge.
Forge, aye.
Forge, I. Larin, I. McKenzie.
Mackenzie, yes.
McKenzie, I. Medina, absent. Molina.
Molina, I.
Molina, I. Olage.
Olage, I.
Olage, I. Pacheco, absent. Takur.
Takur, I.
Takur, I. You.
You, I.
You, I. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Let's do 12:05 to come back. We're back. We're going to table, as we did in the Dental Assisting Council, we're going to table 27D, and we're going to move on to item 27E, potential legislative proposal to amend Business Professions Code Section 1755 regarding infection control courses. Ms. Valerie, you're going to go first, or Mr. Nelson? Who's going to go first?
Mr. Nelson.
All right, that's fine.
All right, thank you, Dr. Felsenfeld. This is found on page 313 of your materials. This memorandum discusses concerns, requests for the Dental Board of California to review and for potential action on concerns regarding the new unlicensed dental assistant infection control course requirements established under Business Professions Code Business Professions Code Section 1755. SP 1453.
One second,
Oh,
Mr.
sure.
Nelson. Yeah, be sure our board's here. Are we good? Okay, continue.
Thank you. So SB 1453 reauthorizes continuation of the board until January 1st, 2029. Among other things, it adds to the Dental Practices Act a new BPC Section 1755, which establishes an 8-hour infection control course for all unlicensed dental assistants not enrolled in a board-approved RDA or an alternative dental assisting program as specified. The new statute requires unlicensed dental assistants to take the infection control course comprised of 6 hours of didactic instruction and 2 hours of laboratory instruction. The course can be offered either in person or using video or a series of video training tools, all of which can be delivered by a variety of methods. The board council held many discussions during their 2024 meetings regarding SB 1453 and the dental auxiliary provisions and supported this bill. So after discussion and review, it became apparent that this section needs clarity. And due to the lack of clarity and the specific issues that have been identified in this 9-page memo, the board staff are recommending that the matter be referred to the board refer the matter to the council for review and recommendation by a 2-person working group appointed by the council chair.
Hey, Ms. Valerie, want to comment on that? Is that correct?
That is, I second what he just said.
And what's your vote? Do we
So-
go on that? Dr. Montez.
So again, just kind of restate the situation, another situation where as we were implementing this, we realized that there were some clarification issues needed with infection control course. And we, at this time, are not prepared to bring a proposal to the board. So we are just asking for additional time to work through this and utilize the council and a 2-member working group and move forward and keep the board and the stakeholders apprised. But again, we need to continue reviewing all the materials and considering the language. Thank you.
I think we heard the expression, a lot of moving parts a few moments ago by the gentleman to my immediate right. And as president, what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer this matter back to the council for review and recommendation by a 2-person working committee that the council chair will appoint, and it will come back to see us in the future. Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to 20. Yeah, that's true. Sorry. All right, sorry. Any public comment from persons in here? Thank you. I was trying to get out of it. Not true, not true. These are my friends.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce Witcher, CVA. This is fine, and it's good to keep working on this. We understand that a complicated legislative piece of legislation like 1453 is going to need some cleanup. I would just like to say that this requirement for an infection control course for all persons basically working in a dental office that have any potential for exposure is a new and potentially onerous requirement. Our solution to this was what the draft language was in 1755. So I would caution against getting too far away from the online course concept, because we firmly feel that an effective course can be given by distance learning. And so we would not want to just see that discarded. Now, we are also okay with the existing course going along, but maybe if you're going to do cleanup legislation, think about a delayed implementation date to give us a chance to kind of work through some of the issues. So thank you.
We hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, we also saw that the other pathways that this new infection control course that would be online that was seen as effective during COVID-19 could continue, but it doesn't stop the other pathways and other courses from moving forward. So as we do the cleanup, we just want to make it clear that it doesn't affect the other courses. I think that was the second concern that was brought up. We know that there isn't a board-approved course yet, but we hope that this pathway could lead to the development of one.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Oh, I'm sorry. Council.
I'm sorry, we can continue with public comment. I just wanted to seek some clarity from the board with respect to, we're hearing that there's a desire for online courses. Under the existing infection control course, it requires clinical experience or clinical instruction. And that's one of the things that's very difficult to implement online, because typically with clinical instruction, there's hands-on learning, which we would not be able to provide in an online course. Effectively, an online course would just be didactic and potentially laboratory instruction or pre-laboratory instruction, anything that, wouldn't require the individuals to be personally familiar with how to don PPE and how to sterilize tools and implements. So that's one of the things we're hoping to get clarity on, if the board or the board agrees with stakeholders that clinical experience is not required for infection control. That would be helpful. If you could just kind of give us an idea of, how this thing should better be structured. If there's an overwhelming desire to just, have this online course, what does it look like?
Okay, I think Dr. Levine wanted to comment.
Yes, yes. Actually, none of the infection control courses that I've ever been to in 35 years is actually practical, where you actually try something on or do this. It's all been a speaker just standing up and you're watching videos. So I think the online course is ideal. It's really ideal. Plus, it's going to be very difficult, probably expensive to take an 8-hour course in person, and it's not available. So I would think the online course is great.
Ms. Valerie?
I just want to clarify the difference of the one that you're mentioning, which is for licensure renewal. And so this has been a requirement since 2009, I believe. So the 8-hour course requirement has been around for a long time. And so the other point I wanted to make, just to piggyback on Tara's comments, was just that we have definitions in California Code of Regulations 1070.1 that defines clinical and laboratory experience. And so like Tara mentioned, we would need clarification on the interpretation of those in the new law, because I think it's being looked at differently than what our current definitions are.
Okay, we are still in
Am I allowed to speak?
one comment per person. Sorry,
Yeah, no, that's what I thought.
I did that to your boss too.
No, that's what I thought. That's why I didn't.
All right, we're done. We're still in public comment on this issue. Ms. Becker, good morning. And may I suggest that I'm hearing, and forgive me, but I'm hearing people saying how we should fix it. We're going to refer this back to look at that. This may be a little premature on do this and don't do that. And that's just my interpretation. So Ms. Becker.
Good morning. I think it's actually, excuse me, the afternoon. Sherry Becker, representing the Alliance. We are in support of maintaining a hands-on component for this 8-hour infection control course. And I just wanted to be clear that there's 2 types of infection control courses. There's the renewal course for licensure, and then there's the 8-hour infection control course for the unlicensed dental assistants. So just as a point of clarification, and we are in support of sending this back to the council. So thank you.
Thank you.
You said you're with the Alliance. I don't know what the Alliance is. Can you,
What is the Alliance? If you just define.
there
that for
there are a
Mr.
lot of
Chairman, we can do.
alliances in Sacramento.
Sure. The Alliance is the California Association of Dental Assisting Teachers, the California Dental Assistants Association, and the Extended Functions Dental Assistants
Thank you.
Association.
Okay.
Thank you.
We are still hearing public comment on my decision. I would like to just refer this back downstairs. Did you want to try to fix the problem, or are you going to
No,
comment
I
on the
just-
decision to
I
send it
just
down?
want to make a public comment. My name's Amanda Saling. I'm with Central California Dental Academy. I'm an instructor down there. I teach the 8-hour infection control course. I'm in agreement to send it back to, for further review, but I do want to state that because I teach that course and I'm very passionate about it, I believe that the hands-on part is something you can't get away from because though you cannot through a video see how a person dons their PPE. And I think of it like armor. You wouldn't send a soldier to war putting their armor on backward. And so infection control is the foundation of everything we do in dentistry. And if I can't physically see how they don their PPE, I can't tell that they're putting it on in the right order. Sometimes I will teach people who have been in the field for 10 years and haven't taken we were not taught that in our registered dental assisting program. So, and being in the field, I'm in the field for 23 years now. And so I didn't get my RDA until I was 10 years in the field. I had to take that course. It was enlightening for me. And so, and it's enlightening for people that I teach that have been in the field for a long period of time, and they teach it and they say, wow, or they come into the class and they say, wow, I didn't know that. So to me, it's very important part of dentistry and, consumer protection.
Thank you. Any more in-person? No more. All right. DCA moderator, would you please facilitate the comments from individuals participating via WebEx? And I would ask, please, no more discussions on how to fix this problem. We're sending it back, and these discussions will be absolutely paramount then, okay? And in the next DAC meeting and as we bring it back. But DCA moderator, now that I've said don't call, tell us, is anybody online to talk to us?
Thank you. If anyone would like to make a comment on the issue, you may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Are there any comments on the agenda item? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the feature?
Then Dr. Montez wants to make another comment.
So again, I'd like everybody to feel free to send me your comments about any changes you'd like to make or what you'd like to see in the bill. You can bring it obviously to the meeting, but anything that we can look at and review ahead of time of the Dental Assisting Council meeting is always appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ms. Valerie. I think Mr. Nelson's still up, huh?
Still
All
here.
right. We're going to go on to 28A, the tentative legislative calendar. Information only.
Yes. And this is on page 336 of your materials. What this is a calendar that comes out, the Assembly and the Senate put it together. It just kind of tells you what to anticipate schedule-wise. So that just came out. You should have a piece of paper that you got that is that. If you didn't receive it, please see one of our staff. We'll make sure that you get it. It was not included in the original materials because it hadn't come out yet, but you have the latest edition. And that's all on this information only item. Thank you.
Thank you. This is informational only. There's no action going.
Okay.
No action is necessary. However, are there any board member comments? Seeing none,
I'm sorry, not on this item, but do we still have one more agenda item, 27D?
we have a lot more, not a lot more, but we have more to go. This
Okay.
is just looking at the calendar. What
27
table. That was tabled. 27D.
Thank you very
No,
much.
that was tabled earlier. Okay, are there any other board member comments on the calendar? Seeing none, are there any in-person comments on the legislative calendar? Seeing none, are there any public comments from individuals who are participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for comment.
Certainly. If there are any comments on the legislative calendar item, you may look for the hand icon, click that, or you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type comment and click send. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. Any comments on the legislative calendar? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Please do. We are now up to agenda item 28B, which will talk about the 2023-24 end of session legislative summary report. And I believe Dr. Montez is going to take the lead on this.
I'm going to take the lead and then also team up with Mr. Nelson as well. But so during the 2023 legislative year, the Dental Board of California has tracked bills that would impact the board and other healing arts boards in general. Board members and staff have actively participated in the legislative process by communicating with the legislators and their staff, taking positions on some of the proposed legislation. And the bills that the board has followed during the 2023-24 legislative years include, and we have those listed there on page 323. We also have the bills that the board took actual positions on page 324. And again, I want to commend the board for taking the positions that they did. As you recall, in a prior board meeting, I mentioned running into a legislator who actually called out the dental board and thanked us for our letter that we had submitted on one of the bills that actually was not chaptered, and that was consistent with the board's position on it. In addition to this information here, these bills are actually summarized in a legislative summary report that the board posts, and it's a courtesy report. Not many other boards do this, but our board does do that. And Mr. Nelson graciously compiled this last minute for us, and we have it in here. And so what we're asking the board to do is just, if you have any questions or concerns, or if we have, or edits, anything that jumps out, to please let us know. And then we would ask Dr. Felsenfeld to direct staff to post it once any corrections are made if needed. And then certainly if you have questions about specific bills, either myself or Mr. Nelson can answer those. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any board member concerns about any of the bills and any of our positions? Seeing none, I'm sorry, Ms. Welch.
Is this list just reflective of what was enacted? Because I know that there were there's at least, I think, 1 or 2 bills on here that are missing.
Okay.
That the board discussed and I think they took action on. Specifically, it was about expedited licensure for certain groups of applicants. And I think one of them didn't get through the legislative process. It was held in committee. And the other one was vetoed by the governor.
So we have, it is a index of chaptered bills. But to the extent we think that should be included, we certainly I can look at that and work with staff and you council to make sure that that's all included if you feel it's appropriate.
Yeah, if the board would like any bills that we took a position on to be included, that's fine. Again, we were just modeling this after past years, what their reports contained, which was chaptered bills.
Any other board comments on this? I'm going to take a quick timeout. We're public comments on then I'm going to okay. Okay. All right, we are ready then to before we before we refer this back to staff for more work. We're going to ask if there are any there are no other board comments. We're going to ask if there are any in-person public comments on this listing. Seeing none, are there any comments from those participating via WebEx? DCA moderator, please open the mics for them to talk.
If there is anyone who would like to make a comment on the list, you You may look for the hand icon and click that to raise your hand. You may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Are there any comments on the agenda item? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the public comment feature?
You please do. All right, so we're at the point where we're going to ask that this be posted. I'm hearing that there was concern that some of the chaptered bills, were 2 of them, didn't get posted. Unchaptered bills didn't get posted. I think to be complete, let's post all of the bills we've taken up. Anyone have any issues with that? No. So let's do that. All of the data that we relate to that, I think should be posted. Okay. And we are now at, I don't know where I am here. We did this 28B and we're moving down to 29. Is that correct? So this is an opportunity. 29 is public comments for on future agenda items. So if any of you who are here in the room as a member of the public would like to suggest something we should put on an agenda item in the future, not necessarily February, but in the future for us to study, now would be your time to come up and talk to us. Seeing none, are there any public comments from individuals participating via WebEx, again, on future agenda items, the possibility of future agenda items? DCA moderator, please facilitate the lines for them to speak.
This is the moderator. If anyone would like to make a suggestion for a future agenda item, you may look for the hand icon and click that, or you may look for the question mark icon and click that. Each speaker will have 2 minutes with a 30-second warning. Any suggestions for future agenda items? I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the feature?
Thank you. You may. This leads us to agenda item number 30, adjournment. I want to thank you, moderator. Thank you, board staff, as well as members of the public, both here and on WebEx, for your assistance with the meeting. We had a lot of testimony today, a lot of work to go back and consider. We've received a lot of information, and we look forward to your continued participation. So this concludes the November 7th, 8th, 2024 Quarterly Dental Board meeting. This meeting is adjourned.
Good. See you next time.